Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another author interview today. Today, it is pretty much a sci-fi fantasy legend and an author, 22-time bestsellers list on New York Times, guys. I'm so happy that he accepted my invitation, R.A.Salvatore. How are you this evening? Thanks for dropping by.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Pleasure all on this end. Look, the most recent book I got of yours is The Tao of Drizzt,
Yeah.
which is an awesome cover, by the way. I think that's a really, really great job.
Yeah.
I am rather new to reading Legend of Drizzt. And here's the thing is like when I was growing up, I was like, I never really played Dungeons and Dragons. So whenever everybody
Mhm.
be like a big fantasy reader, they're like, well, have you read Drizzt? And I'm like, nah, I don't read Dungeons and Dragons. I've never played the games. I probably wouldn't understand them, right? So it was about 2 years ago. I had a viewer actually send me the Dark Elf trilogy, and he was like, "Read it. You don't have to play the games or nothing." I was okay. Why not? I'll go ahead and I loved it. And I mean, long story short, yeah, I'm at this point now, and I'm still not that far into it. I've got all these that you can see here, but I actually discovered you through Star Wars stuff, which I'm sure
Yeah.
will probably come up quite a bit. But you're releasing your 39th Drizzt book this year. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it's 39 if you don't count the 5 books in the Clara Quintet, which I
Mhm.
do. So that'd be 44. And if you don't count the 3 books that I wrote my son, the young adult books, The Stone of Tomorrow, but I count those, so that'd be 47.
Okay.
And then the collected stories of the Legend of Drizzt, which is all
Okay.
the short stories I wrote for the various anthologies or Dragon magazine over the years. They put them all together.
Well, if you
And by
count
the way,
them,
if you ever want to hear that at Audible, it's read by Melissa Rauch, uh, Ice T, Felicia Day, Will Wheaton,
is that the one
Weird
that's got Weird Al
Al,
on it? Weird
Weird
Al, yeah.
Al, Dave Duchovny. It's like they did this big surprise for me, and they had all these really cool dudes. I actually was on the phone with Ice T doing an interview. It was pretty cool.
I'm not really a big audiobook listener, but that would be interesting to hear. Just to have Weird Al and Ice T read some Driss to me. That'd be pretty cool.
I found out about it because my wife was reading. She was just reading something on the internet, and she comes and she goes, "Hey, what's this?" And it's someone saying, um, I went in there to do a recording, and it's this fantasy stuff, and it's got like talking swords and flying horses, and I can't pronounce this, and one F bomb after another. And it was Ice T. There was his blog, and I'm like, that's my story. And so I call Wizards and I go, why is Ice T reading my story for Audible? And they're like, oh, we wanted it to be a surprise.
Yeah,
They
that's
had
worth the
all
price of
these.
admission alone.
They had Sean Astin did one, and I love Sean, so that was a big thrill for me.
So that's Loth Warrior. That's the end of the Way of the Drow, correct?
Yes,
Are you
yes.
taking a break after this, or just gonna keep on rolling?
I'm working on my DemonWars books right now.
What number are we on to on DemonWars? Because that's one that I didn't really know
It
very
was
much
a
about.
7 book. DemonWars was a 7 book series, and it's much bigger in scope. It's more like Song of Ice and Fire or Wheel of Time. Not that big because I'm not as worthy as Robert or George. George does the best dialogue. I love George's work. But anyway, um, the it's a world building. There's 100 threads. There's bunches of characters. And that's over 7 book series. And then I went back and did a prequel series 800 years before when they first formed the church. That's 4 books. So that's 11. And then I did a series called The Coven about witches who were using the gemstone magic, but in a different way in the middle part of the world for Tor books a couple of years ago. And now I'm doing a trilogy for Saga. It's Demon Wars Buccaneers. And it's the logical extension of the Coven when we have pirates operating off the coast. I'm having a blast. I've never really written a lot of pirate books.
It seems like it. So this is still fun for you.
Oh, heck yeah.
Outstanding.
If it wasn't, why would I be doing it? I have 7 grandkids.
That's what I say. That why do it if you aren't having a good time? Well, now I usually like to whenever I'm going to have an author on, I always want to open up for other people to ask some questions or whatever. But I want to be selfish and ask some me questions first. And I figure since most of this is going to be dominated by Forgotten Realms, D&D, all that stuff, I want to get my Star Wars stuff out of the way here first. So look, I'm 21 at the time in 1999. Star Wars has been my religion since I was old enough to record thought in my brain. So this little book right here comes out, Vector Prime,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess got to ask you some questions about it that you probably got sick of answering over the years. But I'm sure a lot of these questions are questions you've just got on instant replay at this point. But
Yeah.
I just want to know, with the whole like writing process of the New Jedi Order when this started coming out, did they have like an outline and they just wanted you guys to fill in the blanks because it was so many different collaborating authors and things like that, or did they say, hey, just tell us what you come up with?
Yes and no. Okay. What happened was Del Rey was fighting with Bantam Doubleday for the rights to do the adult fiction in Star Wars. The license was coming up right around the time the new movies was coming out. How, coincidental that is, right?
Yeah, right.
So they're fighting each other for the license. Del Rey winds up getting the license, and then 2 weeks later, Bertelsmann, which is Bantam Doubleday Del, buys Random House. So basically, they fought each other up the ladder. Then one bought the other for entirely different reasons. Anyway, oh, thank you, Dino. I just saw the thing from Dino. He's the one that gets you reading them, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dino. Anyway, so Del Rey wins the thing. I had just signed to do my DemonWars books with Del Rey. Well, I hadn't just signed. I'd been writing my DemonWars books with Del Rey. And at that point, I had also gone back to WotC because WotC had bought TSR and they brought me back. Yay. And I got a call from Shelley Shapiro at Del Rey, and she said, Bob, can you put the DemonWars books on the side for a minute? And we really need you to do a Star Wars book. And I'm like, Star Wars? I mean, I love Star Wars. I love the movies. Yeah. But I wasn't into the expanded universe and all that because, I'm in the Forgotten Realms. And when you're buried in an IP up to your neck, you really don't jump into a bunch of other expanded anything. You watch the movies. But they really wanted me to do it, and because they needed it fast. And I've got a reputation being able to put a book out in a hurry, and a clean manuscript. And they needed it before Christmas. This was August, and the book was coming out for Christmas. Mm-hmm. So it had to get done. So what they did is they told me the kind of the overarching story. They wanted the Vong to come into the galaxy,
sure,
and they were more organic based, but they weren't that organic based till I got my hands on them, and then I just had them using, their spaceships were living creatures too.
Right.
I went full bore with that. So you had they basically told me we need you to go from, we need a Pyrrhic victory for the heroes. They needed to think they won, but they really didn't. This is just the start. So we want you to go from point A to point B. It's going to go all the way to Z. Okay. And all right. So I jumped in and I did Vector Prime. And I remember they told me, you got to use everybody. And I'm like, who's everybody? And they're saying, all the people from the movies, all the people from, like, they wanted me to use Tim's characters. And I knew Tim wasn't on board with doing the project with them, or they were still negotiating something. I didn't want to step on his toes. I didn't want to step on people's toes. So I tried to shy from, no, you got to use the characters. And I'm like, okay, we'll have a cast of like 15 main characters. How am I going to do this? And they said, no, you'll do it. So anyway, I came up with the outline. I sent it in. And now we're in like September, and I got to get going. They need this book the end of October.
Wow.
At the latest. And I'm on the phone with Sue Rostoni from Lucasfilm and Shelley Shapiro, and Sue's like, oh, this is exactly what we want. But didn't anyone tell you got to kill Chewbacca? And I was like, all right, where do I send the check back? No, right? I didn't say it that politely, but I'm not going to swear on your podcast.
Oh, that's fine.
But then I talked to Mike Stackpole, and he convinced me that they were doing it for the right reasons. And I agreed to do it, and I've kind of regretted it ever since.
I have a feeling that question comes because that was the next question. Was like, was that a mandate, or was it your idea to be the monster that kills Chewbacca?
No, I would never go into somebody else's universe.
Yeah. And
off a major character on my impetus. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't do that. And I wouldn't have killed Chewie anyway.
Sure.
He's everybody's dog. You don't kill Chewie.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta give you the compliment here that when I saw Attack the Clones in the theater, I won't lie, I was disappointed. Like most people who grew up with the original trilogy were. I was not pleased with it. But I had already bought this, and I said, well, I'll go ahead and give this a read. I liked what he did in Vector Prime. So yeah, I think he likes this. He does this universe pretty well. And it made me realize the story was pretty good. Just maybe some of the direction and some of the maybe the acting just wasn't quite up to snuff a little bit. So thanks for that.
Well, I get to add a lot. I got really surprised in that book though, because I added all the things about Shmi and the stuff on Tatooine, and I had it scattered through the book. And then they said, no, you got to put it all at the front of the book because the movie takes place over 3 days. I think it was 3 days. I'm like, wait a minute, how can the movie take place over 3 days? They're going across the galaxy, loading an entire army, bringing them all the way back, and you're gonna have a fight. And they're like, yep, nope, this is the way it's got to be.
Right.
So I had to rearrange everything, and I wasn't given any leeway at all on. It was really from the script. I had to be on the script, but I was able to add those parts. They told me to add those parts. Now, did you read the third book, Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, Matthew Stover.
I think that might be the best novelization I've ever seen of a book.
Yeah, I was like, I actually like the movie. The book was.
I hate that. They gave him. He's like, Bob, they let me do whatever I want. I'm like, screw you. But Matt's fantastic. I love Matt. I love his work.
Yeah,
he's wrote, just the greatest guy.
He wrote Traitor, which might be one of my favorite Star Wars EU books ever. I mean,
originally me and Terry were talking about writing the third book together in that, because Terry wrote The Phantom Menace, and Terry's like my best friend. So
okay.
We were thinking, hey, let's get together and write this book, and then I realized I'd be the junior partner in that relationship.
It's never too late. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, would you ever visit Star Wars again?
It would depend on the project, and it would depend on what they were really looking for. It's, I love DemonWars because I have control of it.
Right. Yeah.
If I want to blow up a city, I blow up a city. If I want to kill major characters, and I do all over the place. I can. I don't need to talk to anyone about it. The editor can say, I want you to do this. I say, no, I'm doing it my way. I like that. Forgotten Realms, I can't. I pretty much get away with anything I want in Forgotten Realms now, because they trust me and they kind of let me have my way. And but it'd be real hard for me to go to another IP, even though I'm liking a lot of the newer Star Wars stuff. I love the IP.
Yeah. It'd be hard. It'd be hard. I think as not a writer, someone
right opportunity came up. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't say no to it if I had the time and I felt like doing it as a project I wanted to do.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's
I'm not writing dialogue for Grogu though. Just not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. No, you don't write gurgle or
cute
noise here. Yeah.
Chewbacca was bad enough for that, but.
Some general questions for the audience. This is obviously the layup here is what were some of your earliest primary influences for the sci-fi fantasy genre?
Well, I mean, I was a math major. When I was a kid, I would read a lot, but it was mostly I had some Fantastic Four comics. Charlie Brown. If you can't really see it now, but that way back there, that bookcase all the way, that's leather with first edition Charlie Brown stuff.
Oh, nice.
I have early Peanuts books from the early 60s when I was a kid. And I had a deal with my mom. I could stay home, bag school as long as I was getting A's. So I never went to school. I was reading my Charlie Brown books, and I still love them because I think Charles Schultz was just wonderful. But by the time I got through high school, bam! It beat the reading right out of me. We weren't being given many books to read. We had like this big textbook that said we're going to analyze a paragraph of Faulkner and a paragraph of Hemingway, right? And it's like, and it was driving me crazy because I wasn't getting anything to read I wanted. And they give me Moby Dick, or in the 8th grade, Silas Marner, Ethan Frome, and I'm like, yuck, right? I want to go play hockey. I don't want to do this. But then when I started college in '77, for Christmas, my sister gave me The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, that little Ballantine slipcase with the Peter Beagle introduction, this wonderful introduction. And I threw it aside. I was mad. I wanted money. My car was breaking down every day. I had to get to college. I was commuting. And then one night I went to bed and they said, we might get a little snow tomorrow. And when I woke up, I went to the window and I looked down and somebody had stolen my car. I was losing my mind. All I could see was a little black spot with a driveway, and a little bit of snow. So I thought that was a roof of my car. It was called the Great Blizzard of '78 here in New England. And we didn't have school for a week. There were no roads. You couldn't leave. And if you actually, if they caught you out on the streets, even like on a snowmobile, they'd arrest you. It was just a disaster here in Massachusetts.
Wow.
So I would, I'm stuck in my mother's house. I'm 19 years old, and I'm like, oh, great. Now what, right? And of course, this is back in the days when you had channels 4, 5, and 7, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and they were all covering the storm. So, you know, there's no internet, there's no computer games, there's no whatever. Can't get to my friends. They can't get to me. So I woke up one morning and I put on Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. And I opened this book and I read this Peter Beagle introduction, which was just amazing about escapism being not a bad word. I turned the page and it's, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And I'm like, oh, here we go.
Right.
And I couldn't put them down. And to me, it was like, I remembered how much I loved reading when I was a kid, and I hadn't been reading for years. And I remembered my imagination. I had the best imagination. When I was a kid, I had my entire neighborhood believing there was a moose in the woods behind my house. There was no moose back there, but I was jealous because I was like 8 years old. My sister had seen a moose and got her name in the paper. Three of my sisters had seen this moose when they were driving to her house. My sisters are all older than I am, which is where I came up with the drought. And
Really?
So I convinced everyone there was a moose back there. I was a storyteller, and I became a professional liar. So it all worked out. But I read those books, and I just got absolutely hooked. And so I just spent the next couple of years grabbing every fantasy book I could find, which meant Terry Brooks's series was just starting, Stephen Donaldson's Lord Fowler's Bane, you know, the Covenant books, Michael Moorcock, Fritz Leiber, who I would say was probably, looking back in retrospect, Fafford and Grey Mouser is probably where I fell in love with buddy fantasy, which are what my books are, buddy fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Joel Axel and Trary, Drizzt and the Gang, right? So I would say those were my biggest influences. Basically what happened was I ran out of books to read, so I wrote one because I ran out of fantasy books to read.
Yeah, everybody. I had numerous people submit the question. Tell the Blizzard story. So I'm
it's the Blizzard story.
So that's great. No, I mean, like most fantasy fans, I think that are probably at least my age or a little older, maybe. Pretty much all of them have that story about when they first found Tolkien. I think that's fair, and I know that some people get tired of hearing that, but I'm like, it's a legend for a reason, guys. It really is that good. So for me,
remember back then you didn't have the internet, so
exactly.
I had a Walden bookstore, and there was like Pilgrim Books. There were like 2 bookstores in my area that I could go to, and you had what they had on the shelf, and they had one bay for science fiction fantasy, and it was like Asimov, Bova, Clark, Heinlein, right, Zelazny, and then down the bottom was Tolkien. And then suddenly there was Brooks, and then Donaldson, and then Moorcock, and Leiber, and Ian McCaffrey, right? And that was it. There weren't a lot of fantasy books, and you didn't know where to go to find them. It's not like today. You can go on the internet and find them, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like that. There weren't that many. And so once, I had read them all, and that I could find, and so I wrote my own.
Yeah, I did I did The Hobbit, and then I did C.S. Lewis. Narnia was like what I had.
Yeah, I read Narnia
time. And so I think the first one that I remember like being like a new release, and it was like a big deal, was the Sword of Shannara. And that was me. Like now you hear a lot of people going and be like, oh, it's so derivative of Lord of the Rings. I'm like, at that age, I just wanted more Lord of the Rings, so I was absolutely fine with that. But
there was a story in Time magazine that talked about how Terry Brooks created the modern fantasy genre.
I've argued he saved
came out with Sword of Shannara, and it made #1 in the New York Times. And that's when all the publishers said, wait a minute, people want to read this stuff. And they were working on Lester Del Rey and Judy Lynn were working on, and Owen Locke were working on Terry and Donaldson, I think, at the same time. And Terry's came out first. But those 2 series, Lord Fowler's Bane, the Thomas Covenant books, and Shannara books, really changed the world in terms of what you would find in your bookstores, in terms of fantasy as opposed to just science fiction.
Yeah, I've made that argument on the channel several times. That Terry Brooks deserves your respect, guys, because like you don't understand that genre was on life support when he kind of really made it really popular again. Yeah, exactly.
It was this curiosity off to the side, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll add is that if you feel that way about Sword, of Chandler, go read Elfstones. Elfstones is wonderful.
Yeah. I say
Witch
it takes
Song
a
is
left turn. It
wonderful,
does
and they
its own
just
thing.
get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the Night of the Word books are fabulous. I mean, Terry, he's one of the reasons why this genre has been able to grow is Terry.
I'm with you. So are there any modern fantasy authors, say like the last 10, 15 years, a new writer that really grabs your interest, that you're a really supporter of, or you really like their works?
Well, I'm a real support of Erica Lewis, who I wrote Color of Dragons with. It's a young adult or middle grade. I don't know. I can never tell where it's young adult or middle grade. I don't know the difference, but Erica does. And so Temple Hill wanted me to write a book that they were going to try and turn into a movie or whatever. That was the promise that they were going to try anyway. And so I didn't have time. And they suggested, like, can you find someone else to write it with you? And they were thinking of Gino, because we had written before, my son Gino, but he's busy. He's got kids. He's flat out. But I knew Erica, and I had helped her edit her first book, which was called Game of Shadows, which is really good. And so Erica and I are friends. She lives near, when I'm in California, we're not far away. We have lunch all the time. She's dear friends of my family, my wife, my kids. And so we got together and we wrote Color of Dragons. She's got a new young adult series called Kelsey Murphy and the Academy of the Unbreakable Arts, I think, is the first one. It's a lot of fun. So I've been reading her stuff. I started Shannon Chakraborty's Gin series, which is really good. And I'm reading I put it back down because I'm trying to get the second book for Simon & Schuster for the DemonWars, the Buccaneers series. I'm trying to get it done. When I'm on this kind of a run, I don't read.
Sure.
But I'm reading Evan Winter's Rage of Dragons. And if you read Darv Drizzt, right behind you, Evan gave me an amazing forward for that book.
Yeah, Rage of Dragons was good. Yeah, I can't wait for book 3.
Fabulous writer, yeah. So, I mean, I haven't been reading that much lately. I've been flat out, and I haven't been reading in fantasy lately, I should say, because I've been flat out. I've been trying to get everything bundled together. The Drizzt book that's coming out this summer, Loth's Warrior, was really supposed to come out in 24. We were going to take a year off, let people catch up. Because, see, one of the problems you have when you have a long-running series is your front list books won't sell as well because there are people who are 2, 3, 4, 5 books behind.
Right.
So the publishers go, and then they don't push it, you know? And so we slow down a little bit, let people catch up, give it a year or so. But then this is the 35th anniversary of Drizzt. The Dungeons and Dragons movie came out. There's all kinds of other things coming out. And Wizards said, can you guys, to me and Harper, can you guys please get this book back into 2023? So I've been kind of busy for the last few months.
Well, as someone who's only 6 books in so far, yeah, I've got a little bit of catching up to do myself. And also, Aaron, I've only read through 6 books, but Artemis Entreri is one of the coolest things I've ever read in my life. So there.
I like Entreri. Yeah. I got the name Artemis from the Wild Wild West. Artemis Gordon.
Not Greek mythology?
No.
Okay.
No, I love the Wild Wild West when I was a kid.
So I'll guess that this has probably come up quite a bit. Have you seen the new D&D movie, and what'd you think?
I haven't, because we're going to Disney with my whole family. We're leaving Friday, like huge trip, 16 people, all planned. It's our annual go blow out Disney with the family, and my wife is like, I'm not going to the theater before, and I'm like, we just had our 39th anniversary Friday, and it's I said, let's go see the movie, and she said, no, I'm not going to the theater, and I don't want to go to a restaurant either, because if one of us starts getting sick and we got a test and it comes positive, we can't get on a plane.
Right.
So when we get back from Disney next week, I can't wait to see it. I'm hearing that they walk the line really well between the people who love D&D and the people who don't know what it is. And that's what I was hoping they'd do.
Yeah,
I've heard nothing but good from people. And I've heard nothing but good from a lot of people who wanted to not like it.
Right. Yeah. They went into it expecting to hate it. Well, I mean, I had this story about the original Dungeons and Dragons movie from 2000, was that when that came out, I had been following the development of the Fellowship of the Ring for, the whole time. And when I went and saw that movie, I got so heartbroken. I was like, Lord of the Rings is going to be terrible. They just can't do
anything. There goes any chance of Drizzt coming to the screen for a few years.
Yeah. So with this one, I was just like, hey, at least this one, it looks like every time they try to make a serious Dungeons and Dragons movie, it doesn't really go too well. So I was like, hey, this just looks like they said they got this cast together and they had a campaign. They said, no matter what happens, that's the movie we're going to make. That's what it looked like to me. And I said, hey, that's the way it should be. And it sounds like it turned out pretty good.
I think you probably wouldn't want to dump people into the world of Dragonlance or the Forgotten Realms like the Drizzt books, Homeland, first, right? It's kind of like, if you look at where Star Wars is going now with The Mandalorian and Andor and a lot of the other ones, you can get into real deeper stories, if you will. And so I hope it works out like that. But like I said, a lot of people who I knew thought they were going to hate it or wanted them to hate it, wanted to hate it, came back and said they nailed it. So I can't wait to go see it.
Yeah, my kids want to see it, and they've never played Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, that looks like it's a mass appeal.
You know, a lot of my readers have never played Dungeons and Dragons.
I've barely, but here's the thing: is like I put it off forever. I was like, look, I am full on uber geek, but the one thing I won't do is the Dungeons and Dragons. Really, I didn't know anybody else that really wanted to play it. So it was about late 2019. Got a group together. We were going to play. Got everything really excited. Dungeon Master and create this great campaign. He got like this giant LCD TV to use as like a dungeon. He was drawing maps and stuff, and then COVID happened and we couldn't play.
Yeah, well, that's what virtual tabletop's for.
Yeah, so we tried to do it on Zoom a couple times. It just
D&D Beyond and virtual tabletop will solve that problem for you. I've been playing D&D since 1980.
Really?
And the group has changed because people moved away. My brother passed away. Other people have joined, but one of the guys has been with us since 1989. He's still in the group. Wow. And my son, Gino's in the group. Guy I met at 38 Studios is in the group. My niece's husband just joined the group. My grandson was playing for a while.
Do you ever write any of those campaigns into your books?
No.
No? Okay. Because I know you heard about Steven Erickson that did Malazan. Apparently that was their whole
yeah,
D&D
no,
game.
no. I try to keep it separate because otherwise D&D becomes like work, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. No.
I try to keep it separate. The only time I ever really got into a character was when I was writing my my highway halfling, Oliver de Burroughs, in the Crimson Shadow books. I did a trilogy called Crimson Shadow. It's 3 Musketeers trilogy I wrote for Warner back in the early mid-90s. And I wanted to see if I could get Oliver de Burroughs right, because Oliver was a cross between the Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride and the little French guy on the wall of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So I wanted to see if I could get him right. And so we were playing this campaign, and we were several weeks in. We were still first level. And we always played, if you roll a natural 20, you roll percentage dice, and it's double, triple, or instant kill. Like up to 75 is double damage, up to 99 is triple damage, or 85 is double damage. Not to 99 is triple, double zero, and you kill them. So we get to this one place, and it's like this ruins of the Parthenon type building with these columns. And the wizard does a clairvoyance spell, his one spell for the day, old D&D. And he says it's clear. And so since it's clear, Oliver will go in the front. Oh, I'll lead. And he runs up the stairs, and the wizard missed the ogre standing behind the pillar, who jumped out and criticaled me. And I had 6 hit points, and they do +6 to damage. And he rolled triple damage. So that starts at 18. So Oliver got splattered all over the stairs. And everybody around the table got up and cheered. And I said, yeah, he's in the book. Yeah. And that's really the only time I had a character specifically designed that I wanted to put him in the book and just see if I could get his voice right.
All right. That's pretty good. And this one, I want to read this one. I still remember seeing R.A.'s author photo for the first time. He had long hair and held a sword in the center of his face like he was, wow, he's like Conan. I must read him. Remember taking this photo?
Yeah, that was for Faces of Fantasy. They were doing, there's a great one in there. Is it Peter David? Yeah, Peter David did one. He's naked on the couch with a book over his crotch. It's hilarious. Margaret Weiss did the Toy Soldier. It's fabulous. And the most thing I remember about Faces of Fantasy is reading, because you had to do a little 1-page, what you go for, what you do, and why you do what you do to go with the picture, right? And it's like everyone's in it. Brooks, Martin, everyone's in it. And Neil Gaiman did one. And I'm reading his 1 page, and I'm like, you're such an asshole. he can't not be amazing when he writes. I just hate him. He's just too good a writer, a wordsmith. And I was like, good jerk. I'm writing this little goofy thing, and he's writing this like his entry in that could win an award, you know?
Yeah, I saw Pat Rothfuss one time saying that about Brandon Sanderson. He's like, I hate that he's so nice and he's good at what he does because, you know, I can't get mad at him for being so productive and so popular and, you know, so nice. Stuff like that. Which, by the way, someone commented before we went on that said that his preteen is reading Drizzt books and said that R.A.Salvatore is better than Brandon Sanderson. So there you go.
I love Brandon. I had lunch with him once, and I really haven't seen him that much because he's everywhere. You know,
right? Yeah, that guy's.
But Brandon's a good dude, and he works his butt off. He's earning everything. He's earning everything he's getting, and he should be very happy. And he's actually employing a lot of people, which is he's way beyond just being an author at this point.
Oh yeah,
he's created his own company here, and good for him. Good for him.
Another question I got about D&D was, if you were asked to write a Dungeons and Dragons movie, is there a particular story that you would tell or setting?
I do. If I was doing a Dungeons and Dragons movie, I'd do Drizzt.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd do the Dark Elf trilogy.
Oh,
in a heartbeat.
I would love to see that.
And then you can shoot it with the lighting like from the 300.
Yeah, real.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Just to give it that weird, different kind of look in the Underdark. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't need to keep doing more stuff. I've got stuff, and
right.
The Sellswords would be fun too, with R.A.Salvatore and Trary. You'll get to those books eventually.
Yeah, I've got so many people telling me about, like, if you like Trary, just wait for R.A.Salvatore. I'm like, I will get there. Calm down. So
R.A.Salvatore is he was in a lot of the earlier books as my walking Deus Ex Machina. And what would happen is, no matter, he's like Batman. He's got a utility belt. You know, he takes out his anti-dragon spray and gets rid of the dragon, that type of thing. And then all of a sudden, I had to write a book, Servant of the Shard, and I'm going to get to feature R.A.Salvatore and Trary. And I was so excited. I'm like, yeah, finally. And then I'm like, oh crap! You know, I got 4 months to write this book, and I have no idea all the gadgets I gave R.A.Salvatore. Because I don't even know what books he's in. He's been in like this. We're now, 10, 12 books into the series or whatever it was. And I'm like, what does he have? What did I give him? And, I didn't have this like big style sheet library behind me. So I'm like, crap, how am I going to read all these books and write everything down? So I went to a message board anonymously, and I said, hey guys, let's do a list of R.A.Salvatore's cool items. And I went back like 3 days later and downloaded this 10-page thread, and people were naming all the items and what page they were on in the books and stuff. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, right. No, that's nice.
So they did all my research for me, so I could write the darn book.
So
you'll like R.A.Salvatore. R.A.Salvatore's tough.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm still always going to be Clan Battlehammer, but sure. Yeah.
That's in my softball team.
I've always.
Clan Battlehammer. I'm not kidding. We got new uniforms this year. Really,
that's cool. A great name.
I'll probably put some of the new hats up for sale at my wife's store.
Okay. Yeah. If any broke, don't fix it. I say just keep rolling with it. Do you find it difficult writing in the world of Forgotten Realms, where where you're told you're allowed to play with the toys, but you're not allowed to break the toys? I know you were talking about saying earlier was with DemonWars, if you want to destroy a city, you can do that. Do you find that restrictive?
I have done a really good job over the years of staying away from everybody else, which is what the Realms was supposed to be all about. It's this gigantic world. So, like, I'm in Icewind Dale, or I'm down at the Spirit Soaring in my catalog books, or I'm underground in Mithril Hall and Gauntlgrim and Menzel Baron Zan, which I created. And so I really get a lot to do with the places I created. And now Caladay is the new place I created, the new Drow settlement in the north, far, 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 farthest north. Okay. And it's they really leave me alone, and they've been leaving me alone for a lot of years. Sometimes things can get a little frustrating. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of people working on something, and I remember once they wanted me. The new edition was coming out, and they wanted me to use Obuld Many Arrows, who's not. And I said, all right, but if I'm using him, I'm going to kill him, because the story he was going to get killed. And they said, well, yeah, do what you want. So I wrote the book, and I'm like almost done the book, and they go, oh, Bob, we got a problem. You can't kill Obuld because he's going to show up over here. And it's like, all right, So you have
Resurrection spell.
there's a little give and take when you're working in a shared world, and that's why like I saw one of your reviews where you were talking about the dates, how the dates were put in the books.
Did I?
Yeah, you mentioned something about the dates being like nailed down in the books, and you like kind of threw me off a little bit. And I was laughing when I saw that review you did, because of course I want to see the reviews before I came on here to know if I was about to get stabbed in the back here. and I put those dates in there because they kept changing the timeline.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And so we had to nail down that was kind of from on high, that you need to have dates. We need to nail this down. And then of course they just changed the timeline again. And so many things have changed since first edition. The game's in its fifth edition. In the early Drizzt books, they use infravision. There's no light. That's gone. It's low light now, and there's all these like glowworms and glowing luminescent fungi and stuff in the Underdark. So there's more light than there used to be. So like Menzoberranzan used to be just heat, and now it has to glow a little bit because people actually see it. Narvandel, the time clock of Menzoberranzan. So they've changed a lot of things. The magic has changed. And I have to try to not retrofit, because I'm not going back and changing this, but I have to try to, be vague enough or kind of slide to the side of things to make it work sometimes. But no real complaints, because they leave me alone.
Yeah, I have a feeling when you hit the New York Times bestsellers 22 times, they probably leave you alone a little bit, right?
Well, they were leaving everybody alone early on, and then they started taking control of it, and that's part of the reason why the TSR bombed and Wizards bought the company, because you hire creative people and you let them be creative.
Yeah, there's like an ownership change or something going on right now, right?
What's that?
Isn't there like an ownership change going on right now or something like that? I heard.
No, oh, they were talking about changing the open gaming license, and that's something I can't speak to. I don't know anything about it. I'm just staying out of that discussion. It's got nothing. That's way above my pay grade.
So I didn't know if that was going to be one of those things where they end up rebooting it like Disney did when they bought Star Wars.
No, I think they are trying to do like a 1D&D or something. That's what I've heard. And again, I don't know. I talk to Wizards maybe once a week. I have a meeting, but it's about something completely different. It's with people who are doing something else with my products with me. It's not a movie or TV show. But I don't know if they're announced it yet, so I can't say. But I don't really. I haven't gone up there in a few years. I don't talk to the people behind the scenes. They don't ask my opinion about business decisions, like are they going to do a new game or whatever. In fact, when I picked up the player's handbook for 5th edition, and I see Bob created this dwarf, and it's Bruno, right? And Drizzt is in there and all. And they kept mentioning Bob, and they thought it would be funny, but I didn't know I was in the book.
That's pretty good.
I played Baldur's Gate when it first came out, the original Baldur's Gate, and I ran down by this wood, and there's this dark elf with scimitars killing gnolls. Help me kill these gnolls! I'm like, boy, this guy looks familiar.
Right? How about that? So, obviously, I'm sure there is from you, but has there ever been like real significant interest where you thought you might actually get to do Drizzt on the small or the big screen? Did it ever get like close?
Sure. There's been rumors flying since the late 90s, at least.
Yeah.
And I must have gotten 1,000, and I'm not even exaggerating, letters or PMs or emails. I heard Wesley Snipes is playing Drizzt.
Never got that far, I guess.
Yeah, again, when I was working on Star Wars, don't you think I wanted to drop a copy of Homeland on George Lucas's desk?
Yeah.
But I can't. It's their world, and then we have our boundaries, and they have their boundaries, and I'm okay with that. But there's been a couple of times where I thought it might happen, and I think if it's gonna happen, this is probably, I think, the closest we've ever been, because they finally did a movie that worked.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but the movie, hopefully, maybe that'll spring some interest.
They didn't really do the first movies, It wasn't really Wizards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
that had a contract that said he could do them, so he did them. Wizards had nothing to do with them.
Well, you have all these streaming services now that are just eating up ever since Game of Thrones. They're just eating up every fantasy series they can get their hands on. So I would think that with this movie being popular, maybe this might be the best shot. So fingers crossed.
Hey, you know what? If they don't, they don't. If if tomorrow they told me all the Drizzt books are out of print, it's done. It's out, over. My career's over. Everything's done. I walk away smiling. This has been, I was working as a financial analyst.
That's kind of what I do in real life. So
I had written this book. I wrote it longhand in a spiral notebook in 1982-83, a book called Echoes of the Fourth Magic. And I sent it out like a horrible rejection letters. And I was ready to quit. And I'm getting married. The kids are coming along, right? And my sister's friend, like I'm in Massachusetts, lived in New York, and she was actually doing some nanny work with Mark Hamill for Mark Hamill. So I had to hire my sister to type it because I couldn't type, right? She's had one of the manuscripts that I paid a fortune to copy because photocopies were like 10 cents a page, and that was a lot of money in 1983 for me. And she took the manuscript down and on Mark Hamill. This is what I've heard. Mark Hamill's advice gave it to someone that he knew at an agency, a woman named Lulu Baskins who worked for the Peter Miller agency. And Lulu actually called me up. And this was in the probably 84. And I was ready to quit. I was married. First kid was coming. I had started a new job. I had to get a career going. We needed money. We were dirt poor. And Lulu just said, I understand why this book is not going to be accepted. It's not. And here's why. And she really gave me a really hard-ass review on the book, but told me don't quit because there's talent here. You've got it, but you got to look at it a different way. And she gave me just little bits of advice, but really what she did is she told me don't quit. So somebody in the business told me don't quit. And I needed to hear that. So I was working 11 to 7, and I'd go into work, and I was really busy from 11 to like 1, and then I was busy from like 5 in the morning to 10 because I'd have to work overtime pretty much every day. I was a payroll clerk at that time. But in between, I'd just write with the permission of the people where I was working. They said, go ahead, go take a nap. You should be taking a nap. It's 11 to 7 shift. And I'm like, no. And I just kept working on the book. Somebody had, I was mad because they told me I couldn't. Then someone said, yes, you can. And I was going to prove her right and them wrong. So I kept working on it. And then in 87, now I'm working at a company called Genrad. I'm a financial specialist at the time, doing inventory for field service. But I had the book where I said, okay, this is good. I'm going to make this book. This book is ready or it's not. There's nothing more I can do to it. Now I'm just making changes for the sake of making changes, 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. So I sent it to a bunch of places. I got the writer's market out of the library, and I was in there. And one of the places that was accepting manuscripts was TSR. So I sent it to TSR, and I just sent it out, and I just and to some other publishers, and I just forgot it and went back to work. I had to build a career, and then I got a call, and they asked me to audition to do the second Forgotten Realms novel. First, they asked if I could set that book in the realms, but we couldn't because that book started in our world and went to the future.
Sure.
The realms is not like that at all. So the rewrite would have been ridiculous. It wouldn't have worked. So they asked me to audition. So I auditioned and I submitted an outline for a book called The Tyrant of Icewind Dale, which became The Crystal Shard. And it was mid-July 1987. I got a phone call. It's July 11th. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it's Mary Kirchhoff. She says, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you won the audition. You're going to be the second Realms writer. Your book will be out as the second Forgotten Realms book. I'm like, well, what could possibly be the bad news? Well, I mean, they weren't paying anything. I mean, it was peanuts. I wasn't going to be able to quit my job or anything like that. She said, I need the book October 1st.
Whoa. All right.
July 11th. Now, I've got a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old. My wife is 7 months pregnant. I got to sell my car and get a new car because you can't put 3 car seats in the back of a Mustang GT. And I needed a new apartment because it just wasn't big enough. So I said, no problem. And sure as heck, I turned the book in October 1st, and the book came out in February of 88. And it did really well. Got to like number 2 on the Walden's and B. Dalton's list. Got some really great reviews. And that was Crystal Shard. And they said, don't quit your day job, but we want you to do another book. And again, they're not paying much, a couple $1,000 and a handshake, peanuts royalties.
So Icewind Dale wasn't supposed to be a trilogy originally?
No. I just threw the hook in at the end because I kind of liked it and wanted another one.
Yeah.
So when Trary showed up and Bruno said, "Hey, Alf, I fooled you. We're going to find my house," you know, and then they signed me up to do Streams of Silver, and so I did Streams of Silver, and then they made a mistake because then they advertised that book hit #1 at Walden's and B. Dalton's and was selling really well, and they made a mistake because they advertised the third book by me before they signed me up
Oh.
for a contract. So I got a nice raise. I got the first 2 books percentage inched up on the royalties, right? And I did the Halfling's Gem. And that came out in 1990, came out in February. And, a couple months later, I got a check that was my annual income. And I was like, whoa. And then Mary called me up. They had told me when I wrote the Halfling's Gem, that was it. People are done with these characters. Tie it all up in the epilogue. And then Mary calls me up and she said, Bobby, we're getting too many letters about this guy. People want to know where he comes from. We want you to do a trilogy, and maybe it's time to start thinking about quitting your day job.
Wow.
And
so you don't have that story of getting like 900 rejection letters like I usually hear about?
No, I got like 4.
All right.
With the first book, and then and let me tell you something. That's not because I'm Superman or anything like that.
Sure.
Anybody who's successful that tells you it's because I'm really great and you're not is trying to convince themselves. Sure. Because there has to be it's talent, it's working your ass off, and it's luck. And that third part is critical. And I don't care who you are, that is a huge part of it. Either you're born as a trust fund kid who can sit around and write as a hobby, right? That's how it used to be, right? A lot of the writers were fairly wealthy, or they were college professors or whatever. But for me, if I had sent that book in, The Echoes of the Fourth Magic, to TSR 3 months earlier, they weren't looking for a second Forgotten Realms book at that time. They were still trying to sort out Dark Walker on Moonshade, which was Doug Niles' book, the first book. And they weren't sure when the second book, Doug was going to write the second book in that trilogy. And then, so they wouldn't have, I would have just died in the slush pile. They probably weren't even looking at a slush pile at that time, because most of the people writing for TSR worked at TSR. Margaret, Tracy, Troy Denning, Doug Niles, they all worked up there. And if I had sent that book in 3 months later, now they had the pre-orders for Doug's book, and everybody up there knew these were going to be big.
Yeah.
I would have been competing against people, known quantities, with immense talent, like Troy Denning, right? So I probably wouldn't have gotten the gig then. And if I didn't get the gig then, at the time I did, I was done, because I had 2 kids and the third kid coming, and that was it. I was working my way up the ranks in a company, and I was at managerial level now, and I was working for the controller of the company and working my butt off trying to build a career in that I could support my family. My wife and I were both trying to get jobs to support the family correctly. I wanted my kids to have opportunities. So 3 months earlier, 3 months later, and I'd probably be retiring from some high-tech company at this point, as a middle manager or something.
To play off that, Matt wants to know, what does an audition entail for an author?
With Wizards of the Coast, I'm TSR, I call it Wizards. With TSR, I had to write a synopsis. I think I had to do a description of the main characters, and it was Wolfgar, it wasn't Drizzt. And I had to do a sample chapter. And I had Wolfgar, and when I wrote the audition, I thought the Forgotten Realms were the Moonshade Isles, Doug's book. And they're like, these tiny little islands dominated by his characters. So I thought they're going to do like Dragonlance again, where the characters were going to continue through the stories. And I didn't realize there was this whole vast Forgotten Realms world out there. So I had Wolfgar and Dareth, the Calamshite from Doug's book. He was introducing my hero. Dareth and the Moorhound, Canthus the Moorhound, were fighting against giant furbolgs instead of Verbeeg, because on the Moonshade, the furbolgs were the bad giants, in a chapter called Big Rin's Lair. That was the sample chapter that I did. And then they say, oh, no, 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 we don't want you to use Doug's characters. We want you to set it somewhere else. And I'm like, when the water, the map for the book was just the islands.
Right.
And like, oh, no, we didn't send you Ed's maps. And then I found this vast world out there. And so we found a new place, and that's how Drizzt was born. You know the story of how Drizzt was born?
I've heard the story that was kind of like they asked you to something, you just came up with it off the fly. Is that true?
Yeah, I was at work. I was getting ready for month end in July, and Mary Kirchhoff called. She says, Bob, I got to go to a meeting to the sales force and sell your book. This is really important for us getting the orders. You can't use Dareth. And I know I'm not going to use Dareth. She goes, no, but I need a sidekick for Wolfgar. I said, all right, I'll get back to you next week. She said, no, you understand. I got to get to this meeting, and I'm going to need this character, and I don't have a week. And so I looked at the clock. I said, all right, we'll take lunch. I'll come up with something, and I'll call you back. She said, no, you don't understand. I'm standing across the hall, and they're sitting in there, and they're like, come on. And so off the top of my head, I said a dark elf, and there was a long pause, and Mary's like, a drow. And I'm like, yeah, a drow. And now the wheels start spinning. And I'm thinking Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, and I'm thinking, all the things, all those little tidbits that you want to write about that you think would be fun. And I'm like, yeah, drow. Now it's and the drow, they can fight with two hands. A drow ranger. I said a drow ranger because in the edition of D&D, rangers were able to fight with two weapons. So I'm thinking, drow would be perfect. So I said, drow ranger. Nobody's done that before. And Mary's like, Bob, it's probably a reason nobody's done that before. I'm like, no, it'll work. A drow ranger. And I can see she's getting frustrated. She's got to get to this meeting, right? And she goes, all right, since it's a sidekick character, I'm going to let you get away with it. What's his name? And off the top of my head, I said, Drizzt the Warden of Dermot the Shusbanon, the ninth house of Menzel Baranzan. And she said, what? I said, I have no clue. She said, can you spell it? I said, not a friggin' chance.
So you came up with that on the fly? That's incredible.
Yeah, I never played them in a game. We didn't use drow in that game. That's certainly not as player characters. But then I started writing the book. Once I won the audition, and the first scene I was writing at that point, before I went with Regis at Mir de Weldon, was Drizzt running across the tundra when he gets jumped by the Yetis. And I was on page 2, and I said, no, this isn't Wolfgar's book. This is his book. Because now I started thinking about all the things I wanted to say in the book that I could say through him that I couldn't say through other people in the book.
Okay.
And he just became so real to me.
Yeah, a lot of people told me that he was never planned to be like the main character. And I read the Dark Elf trilogy first, so I was like, I don't see how we could not have started here. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, yeah, no, because one thing that I wanted when I'm writing my books, I try to do it on several different levels. Okay, if you're just going to read the books and have a 3-hour blast through a book and have fun with a romp, and great, I'm your guy. I love battle scenes. I was a bouncer. I played hockey. I know how to fight. I know how to write a battle scene. It works. I don't know why it works, but it works because I'm not a sword fighter, but it works. That's great. If people just want to read the books and say, I don't have to think about anything, I'm just having fun, that's great. But I always want to have other levels for people. And with Drizzt, I ask my characters the questions that I can't figure out. Like, there are so many things. I look at the world and I see so many things that just make no sense to me. Absolutely no sense in the way we structured this entire world and these societies and business and, the haves and the have-nots and all the rest of it. And one thing that, two things that I think really stand out to me as someone with 5 older sisters who started telling me their horror stories about work and college and what the expectations were on them. Because I was born in 59. My oldest sister was born World War II, right? So that's a different generation. But when they tell me the stories what they had to go through to keep a job, the shit they had to put up with, excuse my French, I don't like that. At all. And not just because it's my sisters. I think it's just stupid. And the thing I've always thought was incredibly stupid, probably the stupidest thing people have ever come up with other than war itself, is racism. And I always wondered, and I think everybody feels this to some extent, to be judged before you open your mouth somebody has already got a preconceived notion of you is horrible to me. And I wanted to see the world that way with Drizzt. And, to me, if I can't do these things, like the Tao of Drizzt, if I can't do these essays, I'd still be a writer. And I'd still write, action scenes and have fun with it, right? And maybe I'd be a choreographer in movies, right? I could do that. I can watch Crouching Tiger every hour and be happy.
Oh yeah, sure.
But so I try to get all the different layers in there. Like one thing I've been doing with all the newer books in Drizzt is because I see it growing around the globe, is the rise of authoritarianism again, which scares the hell out of me, by the way, as a small D American who believes in the voice of the people above all else. Watching people get led down a rabbit hole one handful at a time is terrifying to me, to authoritarianism, right? And I can explore that with Loath and the Drow in the newer books. So I always try to get those things in there to some extent, because I want there to be a reason I'm writing, as opposed to just entertaining, which I think is fine. I have nothing wrong with just people pick up a book and they have a good time with it. That's how can you not be happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
But I try to put the other things layer it. And that's how I make sense of the world. I do that for me more than for the reader, because I ask my characters tough questions and I make them answer them.
Yeah, I always love those. I guess you call them the journal entries in the ones I've read. So that's why I thought that Tao of Drizzt was a great idea. I just
all the journal entries from Homeland to Loath's Worry.
Yeah, so I'm like, I think I should probably wait, obviously, until I've read further in the series, because he does always kind of, wrap what's going on in the story. But it is
Oh no, I wrote these because I knew they were going in there. I wrote those. They're not going to give anything
away. Okay, great. Okay, it's great, because I do love those sections. I think
that book was more for I get thousands of letters, emails over the years. It's been a lot of years, and there are people who just love the journal entries.
Yeah,
and there are people that hate them. So that book's for the people who love them and want to have them all in one place with a cool cover.
It reminded me of
forever, and now is the time.
I grew up. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was just like the coolest cartoon in the world when I was a kid, and He-Man always had like those little the more kind of thing at the end of each episode. That's what it made me think of, and I was like, that was important. As someone who was growing up in a divorced family, that message was very important to me. So I love those sections. I think they're ground.
Well, I mean, did you read Evan Winter's foreword to the Tao of Drizzt?
I haven't.
Yeah, read it. Read the foreword. Okay. Trust me.
All right, I'll do that as soon as we hang up.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of questions about Kingdoms of Amalur, the video game.
Yeah.
Apparently they're going to be making bonus content. People want to know if you're involved.
No,
you're done.
They called me when they bought it. A group of guys from 38 Studios, including me, because they asked me if I'd be a part of it, and I said yes. We're trying to buy that IP back from Rhode Island. And Rhode Island stonewalled us and then wound up selling it to THQ for a lot less money than we would have paid for it. So it's a real sore spot on that, because we would have loved to get that back. The MMO that we were writing for that world was going to be fabulous. It really was. And I'm not just blowing smoke. The team they had working on that was just spectacular. But Kingdoms of Amalur was actually done by Big Huge Games. We had bought Big Huge Games when THQ, a different THQ, had dumped them. And I think it was a different THQ. This is THQ Nordic that's got it now, but maybe they bought THQ. I don't know. Or THQ bought Nordic. I don't know how it goes. I'm not really clued into that. But anyway, we bought Big Huge Games. And the team down there was amazing. And they were making their own game, but we bought them. And then EA came in and financed the game. And they had to make it. They had to make it in deadlines and under budget, period. And they knocked it out of the park. So my role in that was to help them. Me and Steve Denuser, who now is working over at Warcraft again. He was on EverQuest. Now he's working at Warcraft. And Mike Ledger, who's on Diablo now. Mike Ledger was one of my D&D guys who went to 38 Studios with me, and now he's one of the big Diablo guys over at Blizzard. And Stephen, Mike, and we had to help them come up with a story that made sense for our world. The world we had created for the MMO had a 10,000-year history, like the hidden history of the world, and it was incredible. And so they wrote it, and then they came to me with the different quest lines, and I would help them bring it a little more into the world, just like a one editing session. It wasn't a big deal, but the team from BHG, really, what they had to deal with to put that game out, I'm in awe of how good a game it was. And then I just saw someone said the timing wasn't good. No, because it came out right with Skyrim. Like, it was the third or fourth
And that's what I was
Skyrim.
gonna bring up. That I had planned on playing. I bought both of them. Kingdoms of Amalur are still in the wrapper.
Yeah, and
that's Skyrim, and that's
you were going against. It'd be like putting out a fantasy movie and releasing it next to Jackson's original Tolkien movies, right? But the game has had legs. It's still selling like crazy. From
They
what
remastered it, I think, and re-released it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they remastered it, re-released it. They're adding content. They haven't contacted me. Initially they did. Then I just didn't hear from them. Like, God, I don't know. But that's okay because they own it, and it's a great world, and I'm glad it's still out there and people having fun with it because a lot of people put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that world.
Okay, I got a couple more D&D ones before we get into all Drizzt all the time here. Would you ever consider writing in another D&D world, such as more Dragonlance? I believe you did some novellas for Dragonlance, did you not?
Nope, I did nothing for Dragonlance.
Didn't? Okay.
Margaret Weiss and Margaret and Tracy are two of my dearest friends in the world. Tracy's my brother from another mother. He'll call me whenever he has something really bad going on with him, or I have something really bad going on with me. One of the first people we call each other. I love the man dearly. And Margaret's who I want to be when I grow up. She's a genuinely decent human being. You can't not like Margaret Weiss. She's just a wonderful person through and through. Humble, hardworking, kind, wonderful. And Bob, come do some Dragonlance when the Drizzt books were doing so well. But Mary said no. And they had made a decision that they were trying to keep the two worlds as separate as they could.
Yeah.
With the authors and the styles. So, and there were some exceptions because, like, Doug Niles did books in both worlds. I think Jeff Grubb, I think, did books in both worlds as well. There were a few people that worked up there, but no. So I didn't get the chance to win it. But we did do. Margaret and I did a collaboration at Gen Con once because we had both written novellas for a book called Dragons Worlds of Fire. And I had written a Drizzt story, and she had written a Raceland story. And somebody brought the book for her to sign it. And she started making these really cracks about Drizzt. And when she signed it, because she knew he was coming to see me next. And so then I got it, and I started insulting Raceland back. And this guy's book is full of a back and forth from me and Margaret going after the other one's characters. It was pretty cool.
No,
it was pretty cool.
And someone wants you to tell me the Wabba Wabba D&D story.
Oh, Wubba Wubba, yeah. Well, it's online for anyone that wants to see it. It's my D&D game. Okay. We were playing, and Mike Ledger was running the guy I just mentioned who's working over at Diablo now for Blizzard. He was running a campaign. It was a Ravenloft campaign. Whenever Mike's running a campaign, you know you're going to get a Wand of Wonder, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you don't know D&D, but the Wand of Wonder, basically, whenever you use it, and his command word was always Wubba Wubba. Whenever you use it, you say Wubba Wubba, and then you roll percentage dice, and all kinds of things can happen. And in the D&D book, they had like 100 different things, 1 to 100. But then they expanded it, and there were like 10 different tables you could use, and all these supplements that came out from other companies as well. So Mike had all of those, because Wand of Wonder was his thing. And so I was playing a psionicist, a little halfling. I was playing Oliver de Burrows, but so he was this annoying little rat. And I won the wand. And every time I used it, my buddy Tommy, a longtime guy in our group, was playing this paladin. He's big, strong, armored. And Tommy was a prison guard, gigantic guy, big, strong, tough guy. But every time I used the wand, Tommy got smashed. He'd go running with his sword raised. I will vanquish you. And I throw the wand to wonder, and a lightning bolt grounds on his sword and leaves him fried on the floor, right? Something like that. Every time. We've got dragons coming at us we're on the edge of a cliff, and dragons flying at us. And I go, wubba, wubba. And the wind comes up behind us and blows Tommy off the cliff. We're running away from giants. And I go, wubba, wubba. And Tommy's feet grew big, and he fell down, and giants stomped him. Every time I used it, this was going on for weeks. Every session, every time I used it, Tommy, and it was all in the open. This was just fate. Tommy was going to get absolutely crushed by this one, no matter what happened. It was always going to be Tommy. So we come to this point in the world where this football field-sized piece of the world gets thrown into another plane of existence, and it's just a field. And there's like 5 of us or 6 of us, and we're standing in the field, and we're in another dimension. And okay, now what? Are we going to farm and try to live here? There's no monsters to fight. There's no treasure. There's no kingdom to save. We're in a football field or whatever it is, right? We're in this meadow. And that's all there is. There's nowhere else to go. And so, but we had a wizard who could teleport. But we have one too many living people to teleport. So, but we had a rod of resurrection. So if somebody died, we could bring them back. And we had a bag of holding, so we could put the person in the bag of holding and teleport out with the body, right? So somebody has to die, basically. And so we all drew straws, and I got the short straw. And Mike goes, okay, so Oliver's dead, and you guys are my oldest. No. If I'm dying, I'm doing it my way. And so I put everything on the ground. I took off all my beautiful gear and everything. And I used my psionics to go right up to the top, like 500 feet in the air. And I was just hanging in the air with my psionic powers until they wore out. And then I was just going to do this beautiful swan dive. And so Mike goes, okay, Bobby. Oliver puts his stuff down. He goes up. He falls. He dies. You guys are going back. And Tommy's like, no. And so I'm hanging up in the air, and Tommy picks up his pencil, and he goes, I'm taking the wand. Oh. And I start falling, and Tommy says, you little rat. And he goes, wubba, wubba. And he rolls the dice, and it comes up caster and target change places.
Wow.
Think about it. Come on. That's a good joke.
No.
And it's a true story.
I just wish I'd ever gotten into D&D that deep.
I'm falling 500 feet. Caster and target change places. The wand got him again.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. I mean, to see like how much you guys are going through all the different. Like for me, it's just like
everybody who plays D&D got that.
Yeah.
Somebody type in, you got that.
I got someone asking if that's an acid trip. So there we go.
That's an acid trip. Well, it kind of was.
All right, so Legend of Drizzt here, a 13 series, 30, or we've talked about more than 39 novels. Look, after the first couple series were popular, did you even in your wildest imaginations imagine that this would have this long of a shelf life? I mean, we're going on 40 years now. I mean, that's amazing, right?
No, I just wanted my name on a book. No, I had no idea. I had no idea I was going to quit my job. I had no idea I was going to become a writer. I had, full time. I had no idea that I was going to continue with the. There have been several times in this series where I was sure it was over. Thank you, Pyraki. See, the D&D.
Everybody got it. Everybody.
Yeah. It's the critics. The critics are humorless. Can we, right? Right. Let's also my train of thought. Oh yeah, there was several times through the series I thought it was over. Halfling's Gem. They told me it was over. We'll tie it up, right?
With that ending? No way. Come on.
Halfling's Gem. They made me retake Mithril Hall in the epilogue of that book.
Yeah, but Regis showing up again. Oh yeah, I'm just here to hang out, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was they thought it was done. I thought it was done. Okay. And they were gonna offer me more books if I wanted them, but they wanted new characters going a different direction, right? That type of thing. Which is why after Dark Elf we went to the Cleric Quintet. And I thought Drizzt was done after Dark Elf with those 6 books. And then Walden Books told TSR, we want a hardcover. It'll be TSR's first hardcover. It's got to be Dark Elf and it's got to be Salvatore. And so they called me up, and I got a call from Mary, another one of those, I got good news and bad news. And I'm like, well, what's the good news? Right now, I'm out of work now. I'm working furiously trying to make a living as a writer now. No, I'm paying my own insurance all of a sudden and all of that. I don't have all the benefits anymore. And she says, well, and she told me, you're going to be a hardcover author. And she told me about Walden said, now, hardcover is huge for a writer financially, at least at that time particularly, because you get paid a higher percentage on much higher cover price. Right. Like a much higher percentage on a much higher cover price. And that's how you make your money. So that's like, oh my God, I'm going to get a breather. What could possibly be the bad news? She said, I need it in 6 weeks. So I wrote The Legacy in 6 weeks, essentially.
Wow.
From a cold start.
That's my next one up. And I'm excited to see a confrontation with a certain Spider Queen.
And so I thought it was done then. That's the second time in the first 4 years or 5 years. I thought it was done again. And then halfway through that series, a new editor came in at TSR, and he's a guy. He had actually signed me to do 3 books with Warner. That was my Crimson Shadow books with Oliver DeBarros that I was talking about. And I was coming up for a new contract. I was working on the third. I was finishing up the 3rd book, or starting on the 4th book of the quartet. And I had also done the 5 cleric books at the same time. And now I got to go write the books for Warner that he had signed me up for. He's up at TSR, and he says, and I thought it was going to be easy because I wasn't asking for any more money or anything. These books had done incredibly well. I had never anticipated anything like this. And they were really good about paying every quarter, and they weren't holding a ton of money back. And I was just saying, we're just going to keep Drizzt going. I mean, why wouldn't we? This is great. Right. But then he wanted me to do the cleric books, to pick up a new paperback series to replace the cleric books as well. And I said, I can't do that. I got to do the books in New York. And I had been on a breakneck pace. And we had a big falling out. I mean, it got nasty, really nasty. I genuinely did not like him, and he genuinely did not like me. And that doesn't happen much in my life, but it happened. And so I was quitting the company. And I was cold quitting the company. I was finishing that 4th book, and that was it. I was done. And he said, well, if you don't do it, then we're going to get someone else to write Drizzt. And I said, well, I can't stop you from doing it. It's work for hire. I've got my contracts. But I'm going to tell you that, think long term, because if you ever want me back again to write Drizzt, and somebody else has written a book featuring Drizzt as the main character, I won't come back and write Drizzt. He's dead to me at that point. I'll go on with something different, maybe. But I won't come back to that character. So that was that. So I thought it was over then. That was 95, I think, or 94. I thought it was over again. And that's when Del Rey called me up and said, come in and we're going to give you as long as you want to write the best book you can write, which was a breath of fresh air to me. I had done 10 Drizzt books, finished the Echoes of the 4th Magic series. That's 3 books. I did the Spear Wielder's Tales. That's 3 books. And I had done the Crimson Shadow. That's 3 books. So what's that? That's 19 books. And the 5 cleric books. I did like 24 books in like 7 years, 8 years. Well, the first one was already written, so 23 books. And I was just burned out. There was no way I was going to be able to do 3 books a year. So I just walked away. And we were getting ready to sell the house because, you're not going to be able to afford the house if you don't have income. And I hadn't made, you don't become independently wealthy as an author. That's one of the big misconceptions about the world. You can get there, and it takes years and years and years and years and years of backlist books or the big blowout all at once. That's happened with a couple of people I know, but that's not the norm. And so I thought it was over again. And then Wizards bought TSR out of bankruptcy, and Peter Atkinson called me up and he said, Bob, we've got Margaret and Tracy back, and we think Dragonlance is healthy with Margaret and Tracy, and we got Ed Greenwood back, and we want you back because we think the Realms are healthy with you two. And I said, no, I won't come back. I'm sorry, because the guy was still working there. I said, you're going to want me to work with so-and-so, and I don't want to work with him, and he doesn't want to work with me, and neither one of us trusts each other, and we're just not going to do it. And plus, you've got a book coming out with Drizzt, and you want me back to write Drizzt, and I won't come back and write Drizzt. And then So I thought it was over, and we parted ways. He sent me the money they owed me. I had a lawsuit going against them. They owed me a fortune from the last hardcover, and I was working with Del Rey, and I was perfectly content. And then just a couple of months later, I got a call from Peter, and he said, "Bob, so and so's out. Mary Kirchhoff came back in. The Drizzt book was killed, and we want you back." So I thought it was over.
Did you ever get to see what that person had written with Drizzt?
No.
Or would you
No,
not
they
even
never
want to
called
know?
me. They never let me know, and I don't want to know. And it's it's if they want to put different names in it and put it out there, I wouldn't have cared. But I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. They had gotten a ton of mail saying, "Don't how dare you write Drizzt?"
Yeah, no, that would feel like.
And they had asked. By the way, they had asked a lot of my friends. They asked Elaine Cunningham to do it, and she said no chance. They asked Troy Denning. He said not a chance. They asked Jim Lowther. He said not a chance. And because we were a tight knit team, we were all friends. We were respecting each other. When Elaine Cunningham did her Daughter of the Drow Starlight and Shadow series, she called me. And she said, "What are you going to use in the future? They want me to do this. Is this okay with you?" I said, "I think it'd be great. You're fabulous. I love Elaine Cunningham's work. She's a wonderful writer." And she called me, and she was really respectful not to step on my toes. And then I returned the favor not to step on her toes as I went forward with my series after her books when I came back. And that was all. By the way, this is all in the what's the name of the book? Slaying the Dragon, I think, is the name of the book that came out. About TSR and what happened to TSR. And this was a big part of it.
No, I would just feel like that was like someone else taking my kid to Disneyland or something and not inviting me. If someone else is writing my character, I don't know.
I do the essays. It can't get more personal than that to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and plus I told them flat out, if anyone else ever writes Drizzt, I won't do it again. And it was that simple. I wasn't changing my mind, and I didn't feel the least bit bad about it. The other author never called me. He knew how I felt. Everyone knew. There was a war between me and that editor.
Well, it looks like it worked out.
And I got to tell you, I've had most of the editors in New York. I've been incredibly fortunate to have some of the best editors who have made me a better writer, made my books better, starting with Mary Kirchhoff and Eric Severson at TSR, Jim Lowther at TSR, Aaron Evans edited Gino's book that he did with me. Phil Athens for 2 decades was my editor, and I love the man to death. And then over in Del Rey, Veronica Chapman, Shelley Shapiro, Betsy Mitchell's my editor again with Open Road. She's redoing the Spear Wielders books and the Crimson Shadow books, and I love Betsy to death. She's awesome. These are top-notch people. I'm working with David Palmerico. I worked with Chris Morgan over at I have no complaints at all, except that one situation.
No, you sound like you were keeping these editors busy if you're writing books in 6 weeks. So
I write clean drafts, though. I really do.
Yeah. Are you a first draft guy?
I will get about 80% done with a book, and then I'll start rewriting while I'm writing. So in the morning, I'll do a chapter of a rewrite because I've added stuff, and I don't want it to come out of nowhere. So like if I'm adding something, Jarlaxle's sword is this, and he got it here. I'll go to the chapter where it's first going to be, and I'll just write under the title of the chapter, Jarlaxle's sword is this. Make sure you talk about it. So I'll be by 80% done the book. So I'm here, right? I'm going down now, not up. So I'm 80% done. I'll do a chapter, and then I'll do a little writing in the afternoon, do a chapter, and I'll do it all the way. And then if I time it right, I get to 100 down the bottom. And then I go through the book again. And when I have never had an edit that's been more than 2%, 1% of a book.
I think it's safe to say you found your calling, sir. I think you're pretty good at this point.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just having fun. And I'm telling the stories that I would want to hear. And it works. And I don't know why it works. I'm just glad it works.
Yeah. This one's going to be kind of out of order than what I planned to ask you. But since I'm seeing so much about it, I guess I got to ask you now. Where/when should I read the Cleric Quintet? Should I be reading it before I read Legacy?
No. I would start probably in the middle of this series that you're reading now.
Okay.
Because near the end of the series, you will meet Catherley. And the Clara Quintet's fun. I mean, it's
I
and it's
want to
an
read it to make
entirely
sure I'm reading it in
different.
the right order. Yeah.
I have a see. Ed Greenwood and I fight all the time about the gods and the realms. Okay, Ed created the realms, and the gods. Their power comes from how many people worship them and all this. And they kind of, it's almost like they send travel brochures to the afterlife. Come with me, you'll be in the green fields of Elysium or whatever. You know what I mean? And I think of the gods in the realms as these meddling super beings that are just playing little games with the human pawns. And not as God, but as just like, people with an ant farm and we're the ants. And so I was writing Clara Quintet, and what I realized, because I couldn't understand what was wrong with Catherley, the main character, something was bugging him. And when the character's off key to me, I don't change him. I try to find out what's wrong with him. And I realized about the third book that he was an agnostic. He thought he was just accessing the arcane magics, not some god named Denier. So he felt like a hypocrite. And it got into some really nice discussions with it, but the series is a romp. And I mean, I've got Ivan and Pickle Boulder Shoulder. The dwarves are just, Pickle's like my favorite character, I think. One of my favorite characters to write is Pickle. And he's back in the new books too, so that's kind of cool.
Well, I haven't gotten that one yet because I started collecting these and they all match, and then they stopped.
Yeah,
with the swords. I don't know if you have any control over that. Are they planning to continue these matching covers?
I have no control over that. They have the first 4 series, so the first 14 books in these wonderful 25th anniversary editions, and they were supposed to do the whole thing. It just keeps happening. Now I can tell you they are recovering the Drizzt books this year, all of them.
Oh, great! Of course. Now that I've started collecting,
Homeland all the way to Loth's Warrior, in coordination with Harper. They're going back and forth with the covers. Watsy's always had last say on covers, so it'll be that style. And they're doing all the books 1 to 39, and they should be much easier to keep track of where you're supposed to be.
Well, to show you the frustrating thing about these as a collector is that some of them are book 10 and some they're numbered like numerically, and it's not focusing, but some of them are Roman numerals and some of them are numeric digits. So
probably different printings. Yeah.
One's got the D&D logo, one's got the Wizards logo. So yeah.
Well, there you go, because you have a different company coming in and redoing the books. And and they don't print their own books because those books are put out by Penguin Random House, not by Wizards.
Yeah, the life of a collector.
And they were put out by Macmillan many years ago. Then it went to Penguin Random House, went back to Macmillan, went back to Penguin Random House. So it's so many things. People think it's smooth. It's not, and that includes the writing part as well. A lot of times. And that's not just with shared worlds. But shared worlds just makes it more complicated.
Definitely. I can see that. I saw someone ask it earlier. They want you to say these names. Can you say the name of this certain animal companion?
Can you?
I say Guinevere.
Yeah. That's the Celtic spelling of Arthur's queen.
Yeah, Guinevere. Yeah, people were telling me it was pronounced Guinevere. I was like, I'm going with Guinevere.
Yeah. But did you ever read the amazing Mary Stewart books? The Crystal Cave, the Hollow Hills, the
I read the Crystal Cave in high school. Don't remember a ton, but that was the only one that I read. But I did like it. Yeah.
Guinevere is Arthur's queen, and the name means shadow, which I thought was perfect for the Panther.
Right. Okay.
And this was back in the early days of the realms when we get away with things like that. They probably wouldn't allow that now that the IP has got its own style and everything, because now they want names. But it just made sense to me back then, so I did it.
Speaking of Guinevere, I feel like people sold this series to me the wrong way. For years, it was always like, oh, yeah, you got to read them. They're Dungeons and Dragons. You'll love it. And I was like, If someone told me it has a dual-wielding dark elf with an animal companion that's a spectral panther, I'd been like, what? Hell yes. Not right now. So, Guinevere, what an amazing idea. Where did you come up with this idea?
Well, I have a couple of Japanese chins now. I had 5 cats. I've always had pets in my life. And I was a loner. I was the youngest of 7, but my family was so much better. Was so much older than me. Like my closest sister was 4 years older than me, but she skipped 2 grades or 1 grade. So we were barely in the same school for like 1 year. And we only had one car. My dad took it to work. So I mean, I was alone a lot when I was a kid. And I had my pet. I had Coco, my dog, and Dusty, my cat, and I had then Yuma, my other dog, and there's the Drizzt journal entries are him talking to himself. He's not preaching to you; he's talking to himself. And if you have a pet that's your best friend, that's a special thing. Mm-hmm. So I thought Drizzt is going to be on the surface. I'm writing the Crystal Shard. Almost everybody he sees on site is going to want to kill him or turn him away. They're afraid of him. They don't want anything to do with him. It's nothing to do with the content of his character. No, you drow, get out. Period. He's going to need something near him or he's going to lose his mind. And who wouldn't want a 600-pound panther to curl up?
Right. I would say when I was younger, I
loved on in the mountains.
I loved the Jungle Book when I was younger. I thought Bagheera was just like the coolest. So that's the first thing I think of. Like, oh, sweet, it's like a spectral Bagheera. That's awesome. So yeah, that's just a great idea. I love the idea that, and with this way, oh, she takes enough damage. It is a she, right? Because I've heard some people argue about that.
Well, what happened was the confusion was actually, again, this is what you get into when you're writing shared world and all of this. They had a rule that there was no gender. So I started with she. It's Arthur's queen. It's Guinevere, and they said it has to be it. No gender. You can't identify it because it's a magic item. I said no. Guinevere is much more than a magic item. No, can't do it. And so when I had to change everything to it, or to a non-descriptive, non-gender pronoun.
Right.
But that didn't flow right. You get used to hearing words, and when you say "it said," it's not the same thing, or "it did this," or when Drizzt is talking to it instead of her, it has a different connotation, a different feeling. It makes you feel differently. So there were parts where the book was a little bit awkward. And when the copy editor went in to get the book ready for publication, they changed it to the male pronoun.
Okay.
In the early editions of the Crystal Shard. I think it's been switched. But first impressions, everything. So people got in their head that Guinevere was... I actually wrote a short story about Guinevere. Guinevere is a she, and always has been a she in my mind. It didn't come out that way in the first book, but these are the things you learn to live with when you're writing a lot of books.
My great fear always with fantasy and animal companions is that they can die. And so I love this idea of, she just takes enough damage. She goes back to her realm. She heals and she comes back. So I was like, all right, this is my animal companion. I love it. So maybe actually sad that I made a video right before I started reading this about like my 20 favorite animal companions that I've read in books or whatever. And I swear to you, every other comment was, what about Guinevere? I'm like, I don't know what that is. So I would have to amend that list.
Well,
I think, because
it's funny, when I started writing, we were that other publisher to the New York publishers. They really wouldn't give us the time of day until somebody hired Margaret and Tracy to go over there, and they wrote New York Times bestsellers in New York. And then they started saying, hey, wait a minute. So a lot of people who came into science fiction fantasy through like the Science Fiction Book Club early on, I'm talking early 90s, late 80s, or through Locus magazine, or and the books weren't even shelved with the other books in the stores. They had their own Dragonlance section, Forgotten Realms. Oops, just wiped out my desk. No, but they had their own section, so they weren't even shelved with the other books. So there's for a long time, there was a large portion of the science fiction fantasy readership that had never looked at Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms. We were still selling huge numbers, but it just got bigger and bigger. It was word of mouth that brought those people over, because the industry was set up to keep us separate, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
So
this sounds interesting. Tell them that me and my buddies tried to do the coin toss test that Drizzt does in the books. We never got close to 10 at once. Have I got that far yet? That doesn't ring a bell.
I've done 20.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Homeland when they try to figure out. It's right at the beginning when they try to figure out, is he a wizard or is he a fighter? And he takes the coins and he stacks them, and he just does and catches them.
Okay. I think I'm remembering.
And then Zach Fane says, Malice, he's a fighter.
Okay.
Because a fighter, my New England came up, because he can catch like tons.
Is Entreri still a fighter rogue that kills people for money, or did he turn assassin?
You could tell I've been doing this for a long time. When second edition D&D came out, this was after the Mad About D&D, Mothers Against D&D, and all the
Oh God, yep.
that
Satanic Panic in the 80s. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah, Mike Ledger and his friends pulled a prank in the neighboring town that had the satanic expert in town telling everybody to keep their pets inside because there was a satanic cult, definitely. They were just trying to scare Jim, he's on my softball team. He's this guy that's still in my D&D group. But anyway, when second edition D&D came out, they got rid of the monk class. I don't know why, my favorite class, and they got rid of assassins. And they changed demons to daemons, and they were trying to kind of walk a stupid line, if you will, right? So I got a call. I was writing Homeland, I think. And Jeff Grubb, who's now coordinating the realms, calls me up, and I love Jeff. And he says, Bob, how are you going to kill Entreri? I said, Entreri? You know, Halfling's Gem is like 100 years after, or 200 years, I think it was 100 years that after the book I'm working on. Why would I kill Entreri? He's not even born yet. And he said, oh, no, we're going to let you kill Entreri. I said, what do you mean? I'm not going to kill Entreri. People are liking this guy, and I'm not done with him. I'm starting to like this guy, trying to figure out who he is. And Jeff says, well, you know, second edition, and there are no more assassins. So all the assassins are having their souls sucked up by the god. Is it Bane or Bao? I think it was Bane. I don't know. Too many gods. They're just super people anyway. And and he goes, so you know, Entreri's going to die because he's an assassin, and he's going to get his soul sucked up to the gods. And I'm like, well, I'm not killing Entreri. Well, we like him, and you've done so much. You know, we think you've done so much in the realms. We're going to let you kill him. We're going to let you do it your way. It's like Chewy conversation all over again, right? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to kill him, and I don't understand. That's stupid. Why are you going to kill Entreri? Well, then he going through the whole thing. The guy said, so what? I don't care. You're not killing Entreri. We had this big back and forth. And I found, Jeff, I don't understand. Why do you have to kill him? Because all the assassins are dead. And I shouted out on the phone, he's not an assassin. He's a fighter thief who takes money to kill people. And Jeff goes, we can do that.
Oh, okay.
And Entreri survived.
Oh man, I love Retro. I said that the comparison I made was like what I love was the nemesis I felt like Drizzt needed at that point. You know, you have the drow with the human morals and the human with the drow morals. I thought it was a great contrast.
Entreri is who Drizzt fears, is who he would have become
if he stayed.
If he had stayed.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Because Entreri feels the same way about the surface world as is explored in the short stories and in the Sellswords trilogy. Because of his childhood, he feels the same way about the Forgotten Realms surface world as Drizzt felt about Mensbaren's.
Okay. All right. No, that's good. That's good. Do you have, was there an influence for Entreri, or is that just completely like Drizzt, where you just came up with that off the idea, just right off the cuff?
There's no real influence for any character,
really?
One-to-one. Okay. You know, the theme of buddy fantasy, Fairford Grey Mouser type of thing, and you know, you have the archetypes that are in the books, the you know, the big-hearted dwarf and all that. But there's no like real world influence, except for maybe Catherley is a friend of mine. The guy named Mike Lavigier, who was a dear friend of mine for many years, and before he moved back to Alaska. And Mike was like one of the smartest people I've ever met. We would do the Asimov challenges on our way to work. He was working at Genred with me. And we would do the Asimov challenges, and he was just brilliant. We'd have some of the most incredible discussions and arguments about the world. And but Mike got like straight F's in high school because he just didn't care about he didn't see any value. And he reminded me, if this is what I thought of Catherley, who's this growing powerful priest, but he doesn't even believe in the gods. He feels like a hypocrite. That's probably the closest I've come to somebody being someone. I would say a lot of the women in the books have qualities of my wife. That's, you know, I have a certain way I feel about heroes, if you will.
Right.
So that will echo what I believe in terms of who's a hero and who's not a hero. But no, I don't. There's not like somebody I know that's in Trary.
So you're
I've
telling
known
me it's
some
a,
pretty bad
it's a me
dudes. I
problem.
mean,
It's
I was a bouncer in a pretty tough club, and I met some pretty tough dudes.
So you're
But
telling
no,
me it's a me problem that I see like a cooler Thorn Oakenshield when I read Bruner Battlehammer. You're telling it's a me problem.
no. He's definitely that archetype.
Okay.
He's definitely. So I'm not saying no literary character influences in the.
Sure.
I mean, Wolfgar is right out of Beowulf, right?
Sure.
And certainly the dwarves in Bruner certainly got Tolkien-esque influences all over the place.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not saying there's no literary influence. The tropes of the genre, when you're writing a book, you have to make a decision about how much you want to shift, how much you want to reinvent, and how much you want to play along. And what I mean by that is, if I'm writing a fantasy book, I'm asking people to suspend disbelief. Okay? If you believe people can throw lightning bolts, or there are dragons, or demons walk the earth, right? Or Faerun, there's another world. I'm asking you to suspend disbelief. All of those things you're accepting. There is magic. There are dragons. There are demons. There are orcs. There is this. There is that, right? You're accepting those things. That's your suspension of disbelief. Now, I don't want to ask you to suspend disbelief further if I can help it. So when Tolkien did it, he's creating out of whole cloth. I don't even know what his influences were because he was always very vague about that when in all the papers you read about him. But that is what people came to think of dwarves and elves. That kind of stayed throughout the genre. So if like for example, when Tolkien wrote Smaug, he had to tell you what a dragon was. When Melville wrote Moby Dick, most of the people who read Moby Dick had no idea what a whale was. They didn't have aquariums. They didn't have television, right? They didn't have drones flying over the ocean showing you a blue whale. They didn't know what a whale looked like. How would you know what a whale looked like if you grew up in Iowa in the 19th century or in, you know what I mean? How would you know? Even if you grew up on the coast, you would see a tail maybe. You wouldn't know what the rest of the animal looked like, except by sketches that people did. And they weren't like whale magazines and pictures hanging in everybody's house. So Melville had to go through great detail in Moby Dick to tell you all about this whale and describe it and describe it and describe it, kind of like Robert Jordan with a tree, and describe it, or Umbrella Echo in a door,
or what half of the one power it is. Yeah.
And I don't want you to suspend this. That wasn't a dig against Jordan, by the way. I love his books.
No, I love Wheel of Time.
But he really likes describing things, sure. Just like Echo, who I love. But that's not me. I don't write like that. But kind of wish I could, but I can't. So if I say dragon, instead of telling you exactly what the dragon looks like, because you know what it looks like. You've watched Dragon Slayer, right? You've read Tolkien. Now people have seen the movies. You know, when I say dragon, that image is in your head. Now I can put a couple of particulars around the edge of that image. That image is in your head. It's probably on the cover of the book, right? So instead of trying to tell you what the dragon looks like, I try to tell you what the people looking at the dragon feel like. Holy crap. We're in trouble. Right? I'd rather go that way. I don't have to describe the claws of the dragon. I don't have to describe, its length or whatever. I say dragon, you see dragon. I can go into what they're feeling when they see dragon.
And I love that you do that because I can read one of these in a day or two, It's not like a Robert Jordan book where it's like, well, I need to take this month to read this book. Yeah.
You can't believe how many dyslexic people have written to me to say they can read these books. I can't read anything, but I fly right through these books. And I think I'm a little dyslexic as well.
My son.
The one class I couldn't do in college was a class called message design, where you had to create an ad and with all the images. And the whole thing is that I'm probably going to get this wrong, but your eye will start in the bottom left corner and travel up to the middle or whatever. And I'm like, I couldn't do it. I could 4.0 every class in college, from physics to world lit to whatever, psych to philosophy, whatever. I was 4.0ing everything, and I could not do this class. And the guy, I was a communications major, and they only had like 4 professors or 5 professors in the department, so we all knew. And Dave Ryder, who was my professor, says, Bob, you can't do this. I said, I can't. He goes, well, just follow it. My eye doesn't move like that. And what he figured out, or he thinks, and this was his theory, and I have no idea if he went any further with it. I throw with my right hand, but I write with my left hand.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
This is my power hand. This is my fine hand. I eat left-handed. I throw left-handed. Right left-handed. I throw right-handed. I bat right-handed. I hit a puck right-handed. And he said he was wondering if the relationship of the two sides of my brain, which will also explain why I was a math major, right? Math is my thing. And yet here I am as an author. How'd that happen? So I think I see things a little different, a little differently. And maybe I am a little dyslexic. I read incredibly slowly. It's like you said, what are you reading now? I'll probably tell you next year the same books I'm reading now. I'm an incredibly slow reader. Not my own books, but when I'm reading another book, my eye will get lost, and then I got to start over again from the top of the page. And it drives me crazy. And the only time I couldn't do that was in college, because I had to get the reading done. So I had to just fly through it. But other than that, I labor on books unless they hook me in like The Hobbit did.
right.
Or Fritz Leiber. Right? I Pfeffer and Gray Mouse, so I couldn't put them down.
They actually have this font on the Kindle now.
Yes.
The dyslexic font. And my 10-year-old is dyslexic. And I was just showing him that because we were reading Percy Jackson together. And I just showed him that font. And he's like, this is amazing.
He blew right through it, didn't he?
He was like, my eyes aren't running left to right like they usually do. And I was like, that's incredible.
Saw that. There was a page out that somebody had posted on Facebook showing the font. And I went, oh my God.
Yeah.
And my wife looked at it and she's like, what? Oh, that's stupid. And I'm like, really? I just understood 100 times more reading that same page in that font than I did trying to read it without that. Cool. But we're finding out all these magnificent things about the differences in human beings and the way we see the world. And one thing I always thought about as a writer is my job isn't to give you answers and descriptions. My job is to fire your mind to fill in the blanks. I think it was C.S. Lewis, actually, you mentioned him earlier, who said that the only one who can really determine the relationship between the reader and the book is the reader of the book. And I believe that the readers bring as much to the book as the authors put in books. I've always believed that. And I'm more convinced of it now when I talk to people who are reading my books and the things they're getting out of the books. They're accusing me of brilliance that isn't there. It's them. They're bringing it in. So I always find my job is, what can I do to hook that hidden corner of your brain to get you wanting to read this and wanting to put your thoughts in and project your feelings into the book. And I've looked at it from that angle. I'm a big Marshall McLuhan guy. I was a communications major. And that's why I understand very well what's going on in the world today and scaring the crap out of me, because people think they can't be snookered, and they can. And I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm not going to get all political on you one way or the other here. But it is very easy for people that know what they're doing to walk somebody down a rabbit hole and to actually change the way they think about the world and the way they see the world. And it's scary as hell. But in the books, I try to do that just to invite people into the fantasy. Because I know they're the ones that are really filling the story out, not me.
Right.
They're the ones who have the image of Drizzt in their head more than I do. They're the ones that know what Twinkle and Icing Death look like from my descriptions, my vague descriptions, and they know exactly what they're supposed to look like. I don't. They're the ones that know how to pronounce Drizzt or Drizzt. I don't. They're the ones that know if what Guinevere really looks like. I don't. If that makes sense. Because I do, but that's for me. What you get out of it is for you.
I'm glad to hear that because I say Drizzt different every time I say it.
Well, I was like, people would always ask me for a definitive pronunciation, and I wouldn't. And they'd say, well, why not? I say, because I'm picturing these two kids in high school saying, it's Drizzt, it's Drizzt, it's Drizzt, it's Drizzt. Third kid walks up and says, what are you talking about? You never read this guy? And I win. Oh, there's a marketing guy. Come out of the call.
I got one last Drizzt question here. Settle this debate.
No.
Should noobs to the series, should they read Dark Elf or Icewind Dale first? Do you care?
You know, it depends what the meaning of the word is. No, it depends on what their background is in reading. If it's somebody who can handle like fantastical, I always love Homeland. I think Homeland, The Companions, and the newer books are my favorite books in the series. I always like Homeland and Exile and Sojourn as a start. But if it's somebody who's not sure about elves and dwarves and all these other things, Icewind Dale is more relatable, I think. You know? I mean, if you've watched The Sopranos, you can probably get Menzo Berenzan.
I think so.
Because when they told me to create Menzo Berenzan, they told, they said, we want you to tell where Drizzt came from. And I said, well, I've got the old modules, but they're vague. They don't really give a lot. The old Gygax modules. And I've got the 2-page entry in the Fiend Folio. What else you got? They said, that's it. And I said, well, what are you telling me? And they said, carte blanche. You're creating the Drow in the Forgotten Realms. And so I pulled out my copy of The Godfather, Puzo's The Godfather. And I based Menzo Berenzan on the 5 families in New York.
No kidding. Wow.
No kidding. I'm an Italian kid from the Northeast, right?
I read Godfather. Like, that's one of my favorite movies ever. I read the book for the first time last year. And who knew? It's an amazing book. Imagine that.
That's one of the books I could read and not put down. It's amazing. And the movie's pretty amazing too. But
Oh yeah. One of my favorite movies ever. So I don't know anything about it, and I don't know exactly what they want me to ask you. Before I let you go, everybody just keeps telling me, ask about Corona, ask about DemonWars. So I'm asking about it.
All right. DemonWars. See this painting behind me?
Uh-huh.
It was done by Keith Parkinson for the 4th book in DemonWars called Mortalis, which I think is the best book I've ever written. And DemonWars, I was working in somebody else's playground, the Realms, Ed and all the people at TSR. I had my own idea for a fantasy world, and I wanted it to be I wanted the magic based on gemstones and minerals. Like, that's nothing I came up with. I mean, you still have crystal shops all over the place, right? I mean, so, the different gemstones have reputed magical properties. This goes through history in the humankind. So I came up with this idea of, okay, if gemstone magic is the center of this universe, if this is the real power in the universe, who's got them? How do they get them? And so I'm thinking they have mines. Is it like Blood Diamond, right? Is it that type of a setup? And I came up with a world called Corona, and it's called that because it has a ring,
right?
And you can see it from certain vantage points, certain times, kind of like the Aurora Borealis in our world, but it's equatorial, and it's got all the different. It's a ring of stones, rubies, hematite, magnetite, and diamonds, and all of this. And every so often, several generations, these stones the planets will align and the ring will shed stones. They will fall into the sea in this island called Pimaninaquit in the Marianic Ocean that was found by this monk in ancient times. And the monk, he wasn't a monk then, but he was kind of an outcast named Abel. He was able to take these gemstones, and they have magic properties. When they land, they're all magical, and he could do all. He felt the affinity to these stones, and he could do all these things. And he and the other people that were there, they figured out how to make the magic last because they saw that some of the stones were losing their magic, and they figured out how to do it. And so this became the basis of the church, the Abelican Church. And the Abelican Church in this book, I mentioned the Brother Echo earlier. Have you read Name of the Rose?
I have not.
Have you seen the movie or the TV show? There's a movie, Sean Connery movie. Watch it. It's fabulous. The Name of the Rose is about the great schism in the Catholic Church, the Franciscan Benedictine fight. That was about money, right? You had one sector saying, we keep all the money and we build these grand cathedrals, the glory of God, and the people will fall on their knees before the beauty of God. We built these great cathedrals. And the other one saying, no, we live like Jesus. We live poor. We help the people. We don't let them starve. We feed them. And there was a big fight in the Catholic Church, the schism in the church, where they had two popes half the time, and wars were fought over it. The whole Venice thing, right, was, the whole Florence thing, was all about that. And I grew up Catholic, and the Name of the Rose is brilliant when it portrays that. And so in my book, you have this world, and it's a kingdom of Hans the bear, as we learn in the prequel trilogy how it became that. But it's a medieval kingdom, and the monks, the Abelican Church, are the power. They have the gemstones. Now they can put these stones into items that people who don't know how to use the stones. It can make your sword better, right? And they sell them to the nobles because there's a lot of corruption, a lot of that going on, as there would be. Power corrupts. And so in the world, the question is asked, because it's called DemonWars, are the demons, like Bestas Bulzabar in the first book, and in the newest books, the Fossa and Scathmazane for the Jokanite that come from the West in the newest books. And are the demons these great beings of evil that corrupt men, or are the demons the manifestation of the evil that's in men's hearts?
Sure.
That's the whole argument, the whole philosophical argument behind DemonWars. And so I wrote these 7 books, and it was supposed to be 6, but I realized I needed a bridge. And the first book is the hero's journey of Elbrian and Evelyn and Giuseppe, Gilly, in the later book, Pony. They call her Pony. And battling the return of the demon and the demon's hordes, the goblins, the evil giants. These are demonic creatures. They're not other races. They're demonic created creatures of destruction. And I've got elves, but they're a little different, and they're kind of tucked away, and they're kind of a side story to the main story in the books. It's a very human-centered world, very human-centered, but there are different types of people, as we see as we go forward. You have the barbarians in the north, the Alpinadorans. You have the Baronese, who live south of the Belt and Buckle Mountains in the desert kingdom of Baron, the kingdom of Bear, and they're like more of a Middle Eastern flavor, because I always think that geography plays a huge part in culture, and geography plays a huge part in the way societies develop. Like, you have the people on the high steps who are the riders, right? So there's a lot of mirrors going around in the world that people will recognize, but not quite, because it's a fantasy world. It's not our world, but it even looks like our world. It looks like the East Coast of Canada on purpose, I might add. Okay. So you've got this first 3 books of the conflict, the hero's journey of Elbrian and Evelyn and Giuseppe, going through as the demon rises again in the Abelican Church and in the land all around, and the war, the demon war. Then you have the aftermath of the demon, Immortalis, which I wrote while I was watching my best friend, my brother, die of cancer. And Mortalis is a book about grief. It's a book about about dealing with grief, about too many people dying, just too much. The plague is going on. That's that picture. That's Brother Francis, who had a complete arc in that book, completely unexpectedly. And then after Mortalis, you have the aftermath of all of this. There's a power void. The king was thrown down. The church has been upended. The power void is filled with unsavory characters and savory characters alike. And so we have the bigger scale fight of the second generation. I should send you a review. We're going to be doing the DemonWars books on Kickstarter starting next year. A high-end edition of the first 3 are going to be done in 3 Kickstarters. And if it works, we'll do all 7. But those books, they're probably the best reviewed books I've ever had. But they're certainly, I think, to me, I always consider my career's been weird, right? I mean, I've got my gravestone's going to say he made Drizzt, he killed Chewie, and hopefully someone will say, oh yeah, and there's these other books called DemonWars that are pretty cool, because I just adore these books. I can't stop writing them. The Coven, Owlin, the witch in the Coven, is one of my favorite characters I've ever written. She's just badass. And now I'm writing Buccaneers, which is a bunch of pirates, which is a logical extension from the Jokanai War. And I just get to play with the whole world.
So these are still going, DemonWars. I mean, you have no plan for ending it.
I've got the first book in the Buccaneers done, waiting for the edit. And I'm just, when I wrote the book, I looked at the book when I had finished. I said, I don't like this, because I was going back and forth between the two stories. I said, no, because it's not fast enough. I want that first book to be rocket fast and full of fury and full of action and full of pirate fights. So I excised all those chapters, and I wrote the first book. We don't know the name yet. And then I wrote, and now I'm working on the second book. Was almost written. It was almost done by the time I finished the first book, because it had been mostly done in that big book I had written initially. I broke them apart, and it works much better, because I was able to flesh out a lot more things in the second book than I would have had room for if I had kept them together. And the first book is rocket fast, which is what I wanted. So I did those. And the Highwayman books, which are the prequel trilogy, the 4 books, Saga of the First King, they call it. The Highwayman book was very personal to me, because a friend of mine, his brother, has cerebral palsy. And you would see him walking around, right? And the hero in that story has a similar affliction. And I always wondered, because I was picked on brutally in junior high school. I was the smallest kid in my class. And so I think that's why I became a bouncer, because I wanted to beat up bullies.
Right.
And I did. And that was fun. But
the demons out. Yeah.
Yeah, the demons out. Actually, I was a really good bouncer, because I didn't get in a lot of fights. I talked them out of it, which is what you're supposed to do, because fighting hurts.
Right.
And even if you win, it hurts. So completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, I wondered what it would be like to grow up and have to deal. You see it in Forrest Gump, right? When he's a kid, right? But to have to deal with the cruelty of kids when you're that different. And what's inside there, right? Here you are inside, and you see football or baseball or whatever that makes sense to you, tennis, whatever, it makes sense to you, but your body won't listen to your brain. What's it like? And he became the Highwayman in that series. And I remember I was at a book signing once, and this guy came up to the table, and he looked at me, and he goes, this book, and he burst into tears, because he had a kid who had some serious issues. And he said, I'm going to read him this book, and he's going to know there's nothing he can't do. That's heartwarming. When you hear something like that, it's your armor to keep doing this. Because being a writer is brutal. I'm going to tell you flat out. Being a writer is writing that paper in the second grade that you think is the greatest thing ever written, and getting it back with all this, with red marks all over.
Red ink, yeah.
Right? Because everybody's, and this is, by the way, the reason I agreed to do this interview, because my cred's gone now. I talked to a critic. You're not supposed to do that.
I would call myself a critic, but sure.
I told you this. The reason is because I finally found someone, because when someone told me that you were going to do my books, and I saw your interest, so it was on the line. And I said, who's Mike's? And I looked, and you get a lot of views, and I'm like, oh, he's doing my books. That's cool. And I was really interested, because here's someone. The best review I ever got in my life was from a guy up at St. John, Canada, who wrote a review of my book Transcendence. And he started off saying, well, I had nothing else to read, and I had to get my column in, so I picked it up and gave this big, my resigned ho-hum, and I read it. And then he went on, and the book blew him away. And this is the 6th book in a 7-book series. And he had no idea. All he knew was I was some D&D writer, right? And that was the best review I ever got in my life, because, And what I really appreciated is even though he started like that, he read the book with an open mind. And when I saw your review of which was the first one you did was Homeland.
I did Dark Elf first, yeah. I
Yeah,
reviewed
you
the
started with Homeland. And I said, well, he's looking at them for what they are. Now I may think there's a little more than some of the things you saw, but you look at books, and I looked at a lot of your reviews. You look at books for what they are, not what you wish they would be. Which I think is a mistake that a lot of people make when they're critiquing, right? You're not going to ever be pleased if you go at it saying, I would have done it this way. So that impressed me. And so when you said, hey, you want to come on and take it? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you did your homework first.
We live in a weird world, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
We live in a world where you better
I
be
know.
careful what you say.
No, and I feel like that's like I see a lot of things with you have to look at some of these books at the time they were written. I see people that'll read Lord of the Rings for the first time and they don't understand why it's so popular, and they say, "Oh, this was good its time, but it's aged out." Like, it hasn't aged out, because I was like, it's still a foundation for just about every author you read right now in fantasy. That was an influence to them. So don't think it's aged out, but I don't understand
how many
people
people
like,
today would look. When I was in college, we went to see a movie called Animal House and laughed our ass off.
Yeah.
Can't do that now. And by the way, this is not a complaint. My son put this to me better than that I've ever heard it done. Okay, my son Gino, the one who writes the books with me sometimes. I get tired of people calling me woke and all, using this word. They had this like word that they just use for anything they didn't like, right? And Gino says to me, "You're not woke. You're waking. Isn't that the whole point of life?" And I thought about it. And I look back to when I started and my attitudes about a lot of things, particularly sexism. I grew up with 5 older sisters. And I can openly say that in 1989, I was a sexist. And so were all my sisters. And so was everybody. We all thought this is just the way it is, right? Different world. And the whole point is to get better.
Sure.
In my mind, if you're not learning, you're not growing, then you're wasting. So you can't go back and look at movies, TV shows from the 60s and 70s now and not cringe. Unless you're willing to understand that this is a snapshot in time. This is the way the world really was. And again, one of the books that I think had the biggest effect on me as a kid, a college kid, was a book called Black Like Me. And it's about a guy who made himself black with treatments medically. And the difference in the way he was treated is this what the book is about, his experience. And that book was eye-opening for me. And these are the types of things I like to look at in my books. And hopefully I grow while I'm writing these books. And if I don't, my wife will deck me. So
no, I definitely will say I'll be showing my kids some movies I loved in the 80s, and I'll be like, "Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Shouldn't do that one today." Yeah. So yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you got me very interested.
You want to have a fun time sometime? There was a movie called The Ugly Truth that came out around 2009. This is not an ancient movie. And it's got, what's her name? She was on Grey's Anatomy. But anyway, the actress. And she works for a television studio, and they bring in this kind of, this muckraker, this provocateur to kind of up the morning show because it's ratings event. And he's a complete ass. And he'll slap her in the butt when she walks by. And this is a 2009 movie. Right. And she's dating this really nice guy who's a really nice guy. Guess who she winds up with falling in love with at the end of the movie? This is in 2009. So it's an interesting world.
Yeah. I was watching The Hangover. Yeah, but that came out like 10 years ago. I'm like, Wow. Okay. So no, I'm with you. I'm with you. But
It's an interesting world. There's a lot to see that goes underneath what you're really seeing.
I'm with you. Well, I gotta say, you've got me very interested in Demon Wars. I didn't expect that to happen tonight, but I really I really didn't even know what it was until I was looking up how many books you'd sold before we started this, and I was like, oh, my friend Alan, he has a booktube channel. He was always talking about. He wanted me to ask a Demon Wars question, and I couldn't get in touch with him to ask him what it was. So sorry, Alan, I forgot what the question was.
Why?
But
How many books have I sold now?
it said 15 million in America, and I'm like,
How many?
15 million in America.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
It's a few
There
more.
was somebody actually did a thing on how many books everyone sold in science fiction, horror, and fantasy, this was in like 5-10 years ago, and the number was incredibly accurate then, at about 30. But yeah, it's sold a lot, and you can't even track that stuff anymore because of audio.
Yeah, book sales too. Yeah, you can't really
You
secondhand
can't track
sales.
audio sales. It's almost impossible because they
Now,
track.
one thing about audio sales, it seems like there's a lot of people who just weren't readers that have really, really latched on to audiobooks. That's why I don't have a problem. Like there are some people who are like, oh, audiobooks isn't really reading, and stuff. I'm like, look, if you're consuming the story, do what works for your life.
I can't tell if somebody's writing to me about a book whether they listened to it or read it.
I feel like if they're spelling all
Unless
the
they
names
tell me.
wrong, if they're spelling all the names wrong, they probably listened. That's a good way to figure it. At least that's how I
Probably
get
true.
from it.
But I was really lucky because I have Victor Bevine doing the Drizzt books, and Victor's awesome. He's really great. He does all
the same guy the whole time.
Yeah.
That's
He's in the studio right now doing Loth's Warrior. He spent thousands of hours in the studio for Drizzt. Wow. And I have a guy named Tim Garrad Reynolds who's done most of the Demon War books.
I'm familiar with him because everyone talks about
Demon Wars. And so I've been really lucky with that. It's like getting Larry Elmore to do my first cover on the Crystal Shard. It's pretty lucky.
Oh, I love these. I love whoever did the art for these new releases. These are so good. I love them. Yeah.
The original Crystal Shard cover to me. That's one of the things TSR had with some of the best artists. And then WotC continued with that. They really defined fantasy art for many, many years. But
I mean, ever since Frazetta,
I can tell you, I don't know how many the actual numbers when it comes to audiobooks, but I can tell you right now that my backlist earns me more money audio than it does ebook and print book.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's crazy how much Audible has.
Yeah, when I talked to
really changed. It's given incredible life to my backlist.
That's great.
Yeah, the audiobooks are huge.
Yeah, when I talked to Joe Abercrombie, he said when he first realized it was a new game was when his first book in the new trilogy came out, and he said in the audiobook outsold the physical and the digital book combined. I was like, wow,
yeah,
okay.
Well, when they were talking about the publisher's been kind of upset because the last couple of books haven't made the Times, but the sales numbers should have put them on the Times, they said. But one of the things that's really hurt me for like things like the New York Times list and things like that is that my audio sales are enormous compared to my print sales now. So it's like you bastardize yourself, but I don't care. As long as people are enjoying the books, I'm happy, right? I always said, as long as people, how long will you write Drizzt? And I said, as long as people want to, as long as I'm having fun, and as long as people want to read them or listen to them.
Everyone's a big fan of Victor Bevine here.
So. Yeah. There were a couple of books that weren't done by Victor because they were done by Brilliance Audio. Remember when all of a sudden all the books came when they had like CDs with them in the stores and the displays? Sure. Brilliance Audio did a couple of the Drizzt books. I think it was the Sellswords books actually. And then Audible bought Brilliance and they didn't re-record the books with Victor, but I get emails all the time from people trying to get them to re-record the books.
Yeah, I think that happened with this is gonna be all going off secondhand because I don't have reading ADD, but I have listening ADD. It comes from trying to block out your loud, annoying kids, and you can't turn that off. So I can't really do it, but I get so much feedback because a lot of my viewers are audiobooks mostly. Not only, but mostly.
If I was commuting, I could do it.
Yeah, that's what
being here at my house. I live at my house. I work at my house.
Yeah.
I have a weight room in my cellar. My friends come over to play D&D, or I have a batting cage out back. We go out and we hit softballs, or we play catch or whatever. Being at my house, I'm busy, and there's other people, so I'm distracted. So there's no way I could do an audiobook here.
Yeah, they told me that happened with Jim Butcher, where they have James Marshers does his Dresden Files books, and he was scheduling conflict. He couldn't do one of them, so they had a new person do it, and people just flipped out about it
No,
so
it's
much.
like having a new actor show up.
He went back and he recorded it later.
Yeah, it's like having a new actor show up on a TV show you're watching. It's real hard.
I gotta imagine if it's one of those that uses really good accents and voices and stuff, it would have to be really, really hard to not just mimic.
Victor, they actually asked me who I wanted, so we put it out to my fans on my Facebook page. So hey, and we put the 3 people auditioning, and Victor overwhelmingly won because he hit the tone right for the books, and I didn't have any say in it, but I'm really glad he won. He's also just a super guy, and he wrote a book too, which is really great. Victor's he's got the goods, and I love that I got this guy out there who's like a star in audio, and his card says the voice of Drizzt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Go for it. Well, I'm glad that there's that's getting maybe these books out to a whole new generation. That sounds awesome. I mean, look, age, I'm discovering it for the first time, and I'm excited about it. So
it's been an amazing journey for me. I never expected it, but I don't take it for granted. I got to watch my kids grow up. I got to coach their teams.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing journey, and I have no complaints.
Well, I consider it an honor that you said yes to come on here because, like I said, even if I'd never read a single book of yours, I was like, there's not a fantasy fan out there, I think, that doesn't know your name, or a Star Wars fan, and they probably have different opinions, but because you're, like you said, you're the guy that killed Chewie.
They have Dark Words with my face on it.
How much hate mail did you get after that?
It's amplified in my mind because I was supposed to begin my book tour at the World Trade Center on October 5th, 1999. No, it was still there. There was a Borders and One World Trade, and I was supposed to begin my book tour, a big tour, right there, and that was the day of my brother's last MRI. So I had to postpone it, and when we went, that's when they told us he hasn't got 2 weeks left to live.
Ouch.
So I had to cancel the tour. So I had to deal with that. I had to deal with my brother watching. He was my best friend in the world other than my wife. When I went on the road, the first person, because we didn't have cell phones, I would call my wife, and then I'd call my brother, period. Gary was my world. He was my older brother. We played D&D together. We played hockey together. He pitched on the softball teams when I was playing left center field or whatever. We did everything. We fished together. We did everything together. And I had to watch him die. And no sooner had that happened, because he died like 10 days later, and the hate mail started showing up.
Oh, geez. God.
And it was really hard for me to deal with. And it was even harder for me to write after that. I had just finished Mortalis, which got me through the whole cancer thing with Gary. And for like a year and a half, opening my computer was painful. Opening my laptop to write was painful to me. And I remember I would go to like Amazon, and I don't read reviews. I'll glance at them here and there, but I've learned that they're not really worth that much one way or the other, unless everybody's saying the same thing, because everybody's got an opinion, right? So I don't read reviews. I will check like the top line number and make sure that I haven't hit a sour note, right? So I'll look at it because the publishers care about that a lot. So I'll look at it and it'll be like, oh, you have 4.8. I'm fine. That's good. I don't need to read anything.
Right. Yeah, I'm friends with Christopher Rocchio, a modern sci-fi author, and he's the same way. He said, "Yeah, I'll check my Goodreads score once in a while," but he's like, "I don't read any."
If your good reviews are going to lift you off the ground, the bad reviews will bury you.
Yeah.
But for a few months after Gary died, and when that book came out, there was a whole group of Star Wars people that went around attacking everything I'd ever done, like viciously.
No kidding, man.
Yeah, and I would go, and I was actually seeking out those 1-star reviews to read them. because I was pretending. It took me. My wife finally said to me, "All right, enough. You've got to get past this. You've got a family." She really made me wake the frig up. And this is part of life. Deal with it. This was like a year later. And I realized that what I was doing is I was using those 1-star reviews as an excuse for feeling miserable and depressed. Because I could deal with that. I couldn't deal with having lost Gary. You see what I mean? Those
Absolutely.
reviews, I realized I was lying to myself. I was reading those books because it made it easy for me to lie to myself. Reading those reviews because it made it easy for me to lie to myself about what was really bothering me. But yeah, there were, and you know, I mean, look, I did Vector Prime. Okay, I'm not sure they made the right choice. I'm still not. I wasn't then. I'm not now in killing Chewie. But whatever, it happened. Whatever. He's a Disney princess now, so I'm okay. But I remember I was at a convention and I forgot his name, but I was there with CrossGen Comics, and they had the guy who killed Superman.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we were all going out to lunch. And so we're walking down the street with the guy who killed Chewie and the guy who killed Superman. And we were all looking for snipers on the roofs. You know?
Well, I can tell you, I was never mad at you, but I won't lie. I was just looking for tear stains in here. I did cry like a 12-year-old girl with a skinned knee the first time I read it, but I was, to me, you know how people got really attached to the MCU? That was me with the Star Wars EU, because I was like, I got my favorite universe back, and it's all connected. Everything's just going crazy, and I thank Timothy Zahn for that, because I feel like he really did pump a lot of life back into that and made it.
They mentioned Thrawn in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Well, I really hope they're going to call Tim. Come on, guys, come on.
You know, when they first announced that they had gotten that Disney had bought the rights, I remember Tim made a Facebook post about like, no one's called me yet, but obviously it's like, yeah, I'm hoping that they're going to make, the Thrawn trilogy, and I hope for that too. So maybe they're trying to.
They mentioned Thrawn. I'm like, call Tim.
Yeah, I would hope that he'd be involved in one way or another. That'd be really, really great. Full circle.
Yeah, me too.
Like for him, for sure.
But again, this is the world we live in, right?
We only get to have a few nice things, but that makes us enjoy them more when we do get them. So, sir, thank you so much. I really do appreciate this and hanging out with me this long. This has been great. It's been a blast. Like I said, everyone is saying, like me, now they want to check out DemonWars, especially when you said that Tim Reynolds did it, because apparently that's like everybody's favorite audiobook narrator.
Tim Reynolds did the audio on a whole bunch of them, and you can still get them. No, you can't get them right now, the books. But I bought the rights back.
And you said there's gonna be a re-release,
and I sold them to the people that are doing the new Demon War books, Saga, Simon and Schuster Saga, and they're packaging them up for re-release and ebook release. Awesome. They're still out there in audiobook right now because I have the rights for that, and I didn't take them down. They're still there. And starting next year, I'm working with a company that's going to they do high-end books like Beast and Press did, the really nice ones. And they want to do Demon Wars. And we're going to do the Demon Awakens, the Demon Spirit, and the Demon Apostle in separate Kickstarters.
And that's where you recommend starting?
I would say that if I was going to start with Demon Wars, I'd start with Demon Awakens. And I do the original series. Great. I love The Coven. The Coven might be my favorite series of the books, but I think the original series really tells you the world more than any of the others.
All right. So if I know anything about nice collections like that, it means I should start saving up now. put something away for a rainy day, like I just did.
Well, you'll be able to get them in. You'll be able to get them in the regular trade paperback or paperback when.
Yeah, but now when there's a fancy version out, who does that? Come on.
Well, hey, more people join the Kickstarter, the happier I am, right? Because this is me working with this company to do it, so that's kind of cool.
Well, let me know when
I did a Kickstarter, but I did an RPG for Demon Wars as well. In fact, I got it right here because I'm referring to it. Demon Wars Reformation. I did a Kickstarter on this years ago. That's when my wife started R.A.Salvatore.com, which is I got a plug-in for my wife's store.
As a marketing,
you can get any of the books there, signed, personalized, except not the Demon Wars books right now. She might have some other older.
As a marketing minor, that's a brilliant name. I respect that.
Yeah,
that's good.
That was my idea. Everybody laughed at me. That's the worst dad joke ever, and then they used it. R.A.Salvatore.com. Damn it! But we did an RPG. My son Gino that I write with was a narrative designer at 38 Studios, and worked with Tricky Fast Games, and just worked with me on a new module for the Cryptic Neverwinter game with my characters. So Gino's a game designer. My son Brian is a major league game designer at one of the biggest game companies in the world, working on one of the, if not the most successful game in the world at a very high level. Brian designed this game. He is an amazing game designer. And I don't need to say that. Ask his boss if he has any bosses. They just let him go because but this game, we have so much fun with it. We played it for 5 years before I had decided I had to learn 5e. But we kickstarted this. It was a very successful Kickstarter, right? And I had a blast doing it. And the only reason I stopped doing it is because when I did this, I bought the Parkinson painting from his widow, and I bought some stuff from Todd Lockwood. I bought some stuff from Larry Elmore, and I paid their rates. And I used the printer down the street in Littleton, Mass, that printed the book. I wasn't trying to cut corners. I hired somebody to do the layout, and I paid the rates for all this stuff. We still made a profit. We made a nice profit. All three of us, we got, a little bit of money going on vacation or something, and we had a lot of fun doing it. We shipped them ourselves. We had a ton of fun doing it. It was a lot of work, but a lot of very satisfying work. And we spent a year playtesting the damn game, having a blast. But then I found out when I went back to do the second one that the only way you can compete at that time with Kickstarter is you got to print in China. You got to do share art, because you can't get the numbers that you need to pay a Todd Lockwood or a Keith Parkinson.
Oh, sure.
Or a Larry Elmore. And I said, I'm out. I don't want to do that. So that's why I stopped doing Kickstarters. But it was a blast, and I'm excited to be back in that space again, because I love Kickstarter. I love the whole concept.
Yeah, there's people like Michael J. Solomon who do everything off of Kickstarter now, and he's been very successful.
I remember I was at a convention, and what was the game? Was it Ogre? It's coming back out. Steve Jackson, and he just put a game up on Kickstarter, and it was just going through the roof. And of course, look what Brandon did. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. That's
of course, Brandon's shipping 300,000 units a month for every month this year. So God bless him and his team. Yikes. Yeah. But that was incredible. But yeah, and I mean, I know of a lot of writers. Sean Speakman does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
WebDroid for Terry Brooks. He does a lot of stuff on Kickstarter, and it's a wonderful tool, and you need that. You need that in this industry, because the hopper is so tight down the bottom for the people who are going to get any marketing money or anything. So I'm a big fan of it.
Well, I doubt you'll need my help, but if you do get a Kickstarter for this DemonWars special edition, let me know, and I will be sure.
Oh, it's in the can. We're doing them. We're just trying to come up with all the odds and ends of what we're doing now. The company that I'm working with, they're becoming specialists in just doing these types of books.
Outstanding. I would be happy to share this, because
there's a space there to be made for sure.
Okay, well, I hope you don't mind me emailing you as I continue my journey through Drizzt here, and tell you what I think.
Oh, please do.
I'll be okay with that.
Please do.
I'll probably keep continuing to review them as a series. I love that, because I've had lots of people in the comments asking, is this a series you can kind of pick up and go? And I was like, I think so. I feel like each little, it's kind of what I said about, I'm reading Robin Hobb's Rumble of the Elderlings, and I feel like it's what I like, that it's okay. It's a 16-book series, and you feel a little intimidated because, well, be honest, her books are a little thicker than yours. But it's like you can read each kind of little sub-series and take a break if you must, and that's what I really liked about Drizzt. I feel like
you got to understand that, unlike DemonWars or Song of Ice and Fire or Wheel of Time or a lot of the other series out there, the Drizzt books really are more like James Bond, or Sherlock Holmes, where you could pick up almost any book in that series and read. I think the Cleric Quintet, you'd have to read all 5 in a row to really get what's going on. But I wrote that as like that. DemonWars, don't pick up book 2. Pick up book 1, Demon Awakens, and go through them. With Drizzt, I think I picked up so many people with Thousand Orcs, with that amazing Todd Lockwood cover. And it was right after the first Jackson movie came out and had orcs in the title. I picked up like 30,000 new readers on the
Right.
first print run. And that's, I get letters all the time from people. I started with 1,000 Orcs and then went back, which is what I want. But I don't think you really need to. Maybe as we're getting near the completing that circle of Dritzt's journey here, the books will have a lot more at the end. I wouldn't pick up the very newest books. I would, but they're probably. I'd be curious to see somebody who started with like Timeless, the last 6 books or the last 3. I'd be curious to see the reaction they had to Drizzt, because it would be very different than somebody who started at the beginning. I think that'd be kind of interesting to see. But yeah, so you can pick up any of the books. Have fun. It's a romp. At the very least, it's a fun adventure.
I think so, and that's why I recommend them constantly. So,
well, good.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. It's what is it? Monday night, Tuesday? I don't even know what night it is. I don't know what night it is, but hey, thanks.
It's Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Kids didn't have school, so I worked from home.
Garden at World of Warcraft because I'm leaving Friday.
Yeah. So you guys have a great time at Disney. So I'm hoping to take my kids there before they're too old to give a damn anymore. So I'm hoping to get.
My oldest grandson is 13, and then there's a 7, 6, 5, 4, almost 3, and 1.5.
Oh,
so not even 1.5.
So you can get the whole testing group there to see which age appreciates this the most.
Oh, we're gonna be loud.
Outstanding. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night, and keep doing what you do. We appreciate it.
I got bills. I will. No, I'm only kidding. I'm not kidding. I do, but I'm going to do it anyway because I love it. So thanks for having me on. It's fun talking with you.
You got it. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Everyone have a great night.
Take care, guys.